That's great. Welcome, everyone, to the June 10th meeting of the Clayton City Council. Please indicate for the record that all members are present, of the council are present. And I would like to ask Jim Diaz to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And we will let you recite and we will be quiet.
Thank you, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. That's much better than having 13 voices say it at the same time and get very garbled in this broadcast. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. There are 4 items on the consent calendar that are relatively routine in nature. Are there any questions or edits to the consent calendar? Tuya?
I have a question, just a quick question on item 3D.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question is, so I understand that there's an increase in the budgeting for that project. And I read, I think the majority of the fee increase is due to the fact that I guess we have to replace more of the wood grain stamped concrete that was originally anticipated. So I just wanted to clarify, I mean, this is sort of an obvious question, but I assume that whatever material concrete is going to be laid in there is going to be matching it with what is currently there, so that it doesn't look like a, quilt, so that it looks like it works.
Yeah, the color isn't absolutely perfect, and over time with fading, it will get better. You can see some difference because it's impossible to match them perfectly, but the end grain is the same pattern, and the wood plank is the same pattern. So it looks appropriate. It looks like it's meant to be, although it doesn't match perfectly yet. So it's
Okay.
just of age.
Okay, but sounds like we have to replace quite a bit more than was originally anticipated.
We did, yes. Was unfortunate. Sometimes when they're breaking it out, it doesn't break the way it's intended to. There are just a number of different things. We did have to move a couple boxes, and that increased the amount that had to be demoed and then had to be replaced. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, you get it as close as you can as far as quantities, but things always seem to change in the field.
Okay, and then for our members of our public, do you have any estimated completion date on those boxes? Do you know?
The boxes are in essence done.
But everything.
We will have one last punch list walk, and then I plan to bring that to Project 2 for.
Okay.
So it's the construction work is complete.
Okay, thank you.
The sidewalk work was complete. So if you want to take a look out there in the field, you can see how it looks.
Okay, I'm going to follow on with that on Scott. I understand from talking with Laura that the replacement capstones for one of the planter boxes on Center Street were supposed to be part of this. Are they going in pretty soon?
Yeah, they actually should be in.
As of last night, they were not.
I'll have to back check on that. There was some question about getting them, and I thought that we had solved that problem. Let me back check and get an answer for you, because
the business owner there is planning on a grand opening in a week or two and was hoping that those could be in place for that, but said they are still missing. So that was as of last night.
All right, I'll check with our project manager and
Wonderful.
Find out where they are, because I thought.
Okay. Any other questions or emotion on the consent calendar?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Catalano, a second by Juan, I believe. And all in favor, please say aye to
Mayor Pierce
as she calls the roll.
A roll call. Councilmember Catalano?
Aye.
Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Juan?
Aye.
And Mayor Pierce?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to go over the order for the agenda this evening. I've been asked to switch the order of 8C and 8D because the scheduling of any hearings or anything on the California Fire Code updates would need to be based on when we're taking time off during the summer. And so I'd like to switch those in order. And I would also like to move the public comment period to now before we do the budget presentation, just because the budget presentation is likely to be fairly long. And I don't know how many of our attendees or our public comment folks are here just for public comment versus to hear our scintillating budget. So with that, unless I hear objection from my council colleagues, I would like to go to public comment. We do have 24 attendees. And so we have some people that signed up with public comment through email, and Janet will address those next. And then if you are in our audience and would like to make comment on an item not on tonight's agenda, then raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you hit *9 to do that. Otherwise, you go to the raise hand icon on your Zoom app, and you can raise your hand and we will call on you in the order that they come in. So Janet, would you go ahead and tell us who is under public comment for items not on the agenda tonight?
Absolutely, Mayor Pierce. The first item I have on public comment, not on the agenda, it was from Rick Happy. I know he signed up as a person on the panel, so I'm sorry, in the attendance, so I didn't know if he wanted to his comments or if he wanted me to still read those.
Well,
The second
on the
one,
line, he can raise his hand if he wants to read them himself, or we can have Janet read them for him. And I don't see Rick raising his hand yet, so why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, thank you. And I'll go ahead and start the 3-minute timer now. Tear gas is a weapon of war that is so damaging and harmful that it was banned by the Geneva Protocol in 1925. Yet tear gas was fired upon protesters in Clayton on Tuesday, June 2nd to disperse the crowd after a nonsensical and probably unconstitutionally mandated curfew. Tear gas was fired during a global health pandemic brought on by coronavirus that attacks all things the lungs. Will the City Council, Chief of Police, and the County Sheriff issue a formal apology to the citizens of Clayton and all who were harmed by tear gas? If not, why not? What action is the city taking to assure this kind of violence is never again directed at its own citizens? The Chief of Police and Mayor have stated there were credible threats against Clayton businesses. The East Bay Times is reporting that a member of a violent ultra-right white nationalist group was arrested on Tuesday. Can you confirm this was a threat or the type of threat you received? If not, were the credible threats anything other than what many of our neighbors are afflicted by, namely what they hear every night on Fox News? Does the city have any kind of reserve fund set up in case there's a serious legal exposure due to the use of tear gas against protesters? If someone has COVID-19 with tear gas and becomes very ill or dies, what is the city's legal and financial exposure? All well-managed businesses and organizations hold their employees, leaders, and partners accountable. Will Laura Hoffmeister, the Director of Emergency Services, be held accountable in any way for ordering a curfew last week whose only logical conclusion was the flashpoint we saw Tuesday night? Will the Chief of Police and Sheriff be held accountable for ordering the disbursement of a banned weapon of war upon its citizens? Thankfully, Friday's night's peaceful rally seemed to have restored Clayton's reputation as a wonderful town after it was so damaged by Tuesday's tear gassing and baseball bout welding vigilance. But property values and local businesses may be negatively impacted in the short and long-term future. There could be legal exposure to the city in the event there is a severe economic trauma inflicted upon us because of the violent actions of a few. Will local businesses and homeowners be compensated by the city in the event they can prove that the city's actions impacted their personal and professional financial circumstances? Thank you, Rick Happy. The next public comment item I received on item 6 is from Melinda Marion, and I'll start the timer on this one. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to submit my comments. As a resident of Clayton, there are a few actions from the past several days that concern me about the safety of our residents and the reputation of our community. I want to thank the police for taking a different approach on Friday's protest than they did on Tuesday's protest. I was an attendee of Friday's protest and a speaker. I felt safe and supported by police force. Although I did not attend the first protest on Tuesday, I reviewed video and photos in which a group of angry people were yelling our racial slurs, aggressively approaching young protesters and threatening them. A picture I saw was of a man with a bat. He was standing on the sidewalk and a rifle leaning up against the fence. My concern is that a person can have weapons at a public gathering and the police do nothing about it. These people continued to taunt and threaten protesters while police had their backs to it and ignored it. In fact, as a man with a child yells, "What about those hillbillies? Why aren't you doing anything about them?" One police officer kept his back to the hillbillies and throws his arms up as to say, "So what?" It's shocking to me that while police used what I believe excessive force on peaceful protesters, they did nothing to respond to the aggressive group that were a threat to many people. They weren't stopped in their actions. They weren't told to leave or disperse like the protesters were. I have been on social media and have heard residents of our community intimidate and threaten anyone who thinks these actions were not okay. I've seen one person on social media say they were going to be ready with their guns at the protest. I've seen residents tell minorities to go back to where they came from. I've seen residents craft messages that imply violence on other community members. I've seen that someone ripped up a BLM poster that was displayed in front of the city sign and trashed it in a nearby creek. I believe if there was no action by our officials, the message that Clayton is a racist town and that we as a community tolerate racism will continue. I believe if there is no action by our residents, safety will be a risk. As a person of color and a resident of Clayton, I am unsettled by what I have seen over the past several days. I speak for many people in our community and beyond. I want to ask city officials, what are you going to do to make the residents of Clayton feel safe and restore the reputation of our community? Melinda Marion. That's the conclusion of that email.
Julie, you're muted.
Is that the last of the emails?
Yes, Mayor Pierce, that's the last email I received on item 6A, on item 6.
Okay. All right. Are there any other members in our phone audience or our attendee audience who wish to speak under public comment? I don't see any hands raised. Yeah, now they're coming in. We'll go to Laura McFarland, and Laura, you will have 3 minutes, after which time the microphone will be turned off. Okay, Laura, go ahead. I don't show her as muted, but I don't hear her either. Laura?
She's not showing up as a box yet, so do we need to do something in our end?
Well, she wouldn't because she's an attendee.
But from our end?
No, she only shows up in the participants list. Laura, are you muted? Larry, can you tell?
In the past, when someone would speak, they would show up as
Right.
Councilmember Catalano indicated. They would be introduced into the meeting. I'm not exactly sure how. And then they would.
Okay, she's now showing.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
There she is. Hi, Laura.
Okay, thank you so much.
Go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
I am a resident of Dana Hills, and sorry, there's like background. It's coming into me twice. Is there something wrong with my microphone?
Do you have both a computer and a phone on audio? If so, you need to turn one of them off to mute.
Okay, I don't know what's
Are
that.
you using both a phone and a computer?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, I'll just talk.
You
I know
sound
that
good to us.
many, sorry, what?
You sound good to us.
Okay, thanks. I know that many of you or some of you were at the peaceful protests that happened downtown in the Grove last Friday, and so you were able to hear the statements made by many of the Black residents of Clayton saying that they felt invisible or scared to be part of our community because of the prejudices that they've faced. And I also know that some of the previous comments that were just read discussed a little bit about some of the discourse we've seen from the residents of Clayton saying, like, kind of just backlash against the Black Lives Matter movement, and that makes me ashamed to be part of this community. And obviously we don't want anyone to feel invisible or feel like they can't even be a part of their neighborhood or their town because of their race. And so I also took a look at the budget proposal from the previous city council meeting, and I saw that you are planning to increase the police department's budget even though they were under budget last fiscal year. And I was wondering if you would consider taking a look at the budget again and maybe allocating some of the funds from the police department into an anti-racism fund or some type of town hall or meeting between Black members of our community and non-Black members, just to foster some kind of better understanding, because clearly we have a problem. And that's been evidenced by the response by the police to the protests, as well as the words of our Black community members who said that they don't feel welcome here. And so I was wondering if there's any consideration for maybe taking another look at the budget and allocating some of the funds from the police department into something to combat the racism that exists in this town.
Thank you, Laura. As you know, the budget is on our agenda for later on, so we will be discussing all of the budget at that time. The next speaker is Terry Denslow, and Terry, as soon as you're unmuted, there you go.
Unmuted.
Yep.
You guys can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'll be short. I just wanted to follow up a little bit also on what Laura was suggesting on the previous comment. So, you know, in regards to the peaceful protests last Friday, I think that that was, you know, an excellent opportunity for our community to come together and start to understand each other a little bit better. I wanted to encourage the city council and or the city to think about holding some kind of forum in the future where we can engage the community and start to hear and understand what kind of change needs to happen so that we can help make Clayton a little bit more inclusive. So it's just, I'd encourage folks to think about what something like that would look like, because I think that would go a long way. And then the second point, I saw the update a couple of hours ago that Police Chief Warren put out on Facebook. You know, I appreciate the feedback. I know there's a lot of folks that are really upset about what happened at the first protest. Similarly to, you know, the first request, I think it would go a long way if Police Chief Warren considered either being a part of that forum or some other kind of forum where folks can engage on some of those questions and have a dialogue that may be a little bit easier than social media and maybe a little more productive as well. So just as a couple of things for folks to consider. I think it would go a long way in helping to heal some of the concerns that we've been hearing.
Thank you, Terry. The next speaker is Aaron Levy.
Aaron, you may proceed.
And Terry, we need to mute your mic, Terry. Okay, Aaron, go ahead. Aaron Levy needs to unmute.
Wait a minute.
There we go. We're good.
There we go. Okay, try again.
Aaron, go ahead. We see you. You're not talking. Aaron, try again.
He's unmuted.
Okay, Aaron, we're going to go to Scott Danslow and then we'll come back to you and maybe we can figure out what the technical difficulty is.
That's weird. Okay, let me go to Scott.
Okay, Scott, you're unmuted.
All right, can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, perfect. Thanks for your time, guys. Just wanted to follow up on some of the concerns relating the use of tear gas that Rick touched upon earlier. Chief Warren, I've heard some things about, was it her decision? Was it other people's decision? I've heard some rumors that maybe it was the sheriff's decision. But one thing I have concerns about is if it was somebody else's decision, why are we essentially contracting our police work to outsiders, as some people might see it? That doesn't seem to be the Clayton way. So I've got a couple of concerns about that. Relating to the decisions that were made, I also have concerns with the police having their backs toward largely drunk individuals, adults. At the rally on Tuesday, the people behind them that the police were protecting were showing baseball bats. There were rumors that I cannot confirm that there were other things there, and they were ready for a fight, and the police were standing with their backs to these people. They were facing the peaceful protesters, many of which were high school kids, some of which had graduated that day, and the police then obviously turned their weapons on them, and that concerns me a lot. And I think Chief Warren needs to address these concerns. I think a lot of members of the community have these concerns. I think a public apology, like Rick mentioned, would be a great place to start, but we have a long way to go from there. So like I said, that's a great place to start. Aside from that, very positive gathering on Friday, so I'm very encouraged about that. A lot of the speakers had some very powerful statements. I was listening to a lot of them. A lot of people were listening to a lot of them. I'd like to encourage all of these residents of Clayton to continue to listen. This is just the start. Again, we have a lot of work to do as a community. I've heard it from a lot of people who were speaking at that rally on Friday this week, talking to me privately about how they feel invisible in our community and they feel like they don't have a voice, and I'd really love to see that change. We drive down Clayton Road every day and see those values that we'd like to advertise on the street. I'd really like to see us practice them more as a town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. And now we will try to go back to Aaron if we can. We need to mute.
Now.
There we can hear you, Aaron.
Good.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I will be brief.
Okay.
There's a lot to do. I just want to say that Friday was an amazing day. I was out there both days, actually. Friday was a lucky do-over that Clayton got, and I want to thank everybody who was a part of that. And I want to thank Mayor Pierce and Councilwoman Catalano. I don't know if I pronounced Tuya. Thank you for being out there. I thought that was the best day I've had in Clayton. It was wonderful. But I have to say I'm still angry over Tuesday. I want to know why police tear gassed our kids. I want some accountability. I want an investigation. I'm not the only one who's angry. There are a lot of people upset about that. That was a knee-jerk reaction to a peaceful protest. Were they breaking the curfew? Absolutely. But I think we need some accountability and investigation too. Who gave the order? Why they did it? I want to know if there was coordination between the police and the Marsh Creek Volunteer Fire Department, who was out there with their hoses ready to go. I want to know if there was coordination between the police and the gang with the bats and the rumor of the guns. And I want to know if there was coordination with the vigilantes that were blocking the road. There was somebody blocking my way when I was trying to drive out of there, asking me where I lived. And that's not what this is about. The police are the police, period. And we don't need local residents who think that they can do the job of the police. I'm glad we got the do-over Friday. When I was out there on Tuesday, I got a little concerned because one of our Clayton PD officers went and put his helmet on and put the visor down. And I said, hey, man, these are kids. You guys aren't going to hurt these kids. And he said, no, don't worry. It's just an intimidation tactic. And that was probably about 20 minutes before the tear gas flowed. So I would like an investigation. And again, thanks for Friday. I want to commend Clayton on moving forward, and I want to commend Clayton on the rainbow flag up in downtown Clayton. So thanks very much for that, and that is all I want to say.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I do not see any other hands raised for public comment. So we will, whoops, there's Holly Tillman. Okay, Holly?
There we go. Wait a minute.
You have to unmute her.
Now she moves.
She's at the very top with her hand raised.
It should be unmuted.
There you go, Holly.
That's weird.
Holly, can you speak?
Hello?
Are you unmuted on your end? There you are. Go right ahead, Holly. We can hear you.
I wanted to piggyback off of what we heard from Melinda and from Terry and from Scott and from Aaron in regards to continuing the conversation that we've had in this town since last Friday night. As some of them said, it was a beautiful evening. I'm glad I participated and brought my family down because we were concerned on Tuesday based off of the fears that were stoked in all of us locally, not wanting to leave our houses. That said, I appreciate everyone wanting to know that we are going to continue this conversation going forward. And to me, it's imperative that that conversation begins with the Black community. And I have been working the past few days on rallying the people that spoke on Friday night, trying to find all of them, again, because as they said, they've been hiding. And I only knew 4 people who were standing up there besides my family members. So please know that we are working on that in conjunction with the mayor. We are working on trying to figure out the format that will be, whether it's town halls, some type of forum, so that we can continue the conversation with our Black and non-Black community members to move this community forward. I don't think the focus needs to be on racism per se, but we do need to figure out how to involve our Black community members more. Everybody that knows us knows that the Tillmans are out and about in town, and I want all of our Black residents to know that that's how they should be able to live. They shouldn't be hiding in their homes. I mean, people that have been here 30 years and I've been here 16, it doesn't make any sense that we don't know each other, and it's time to change that. It's time to change the perception that they're not welcome if that's how they're feeling. It's time to change the perception that the ones who are outspoken in their hatred for whatever group it may be, whether it's gay advocacy or minorities, et cetera, that they're the minority voice. It's time to change that in this town. And I'm glad to hear and to know that we have a lot more community members that outnumber them, and looking forward to working with all of you. And I'll keep you apprised of the dates that we come up with to have these types of forums. Thank you for your time. And thank you all of the council members who attended on Friday to show your support. It meant a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. And just for the record, all of the council members were present down there. We did not try to be very obvious. It was not our place, but we were all there, and appreciate the community turnout and that it went so well. So I don't see any other people speaking up for public comment. No other raised hands. So we need to move those attendees off of the participant panelists board, if we can do that. Move them back to attendees. So I'll let Larry and Laura figure out how to do that. Okay, so that closes the public comment period. Obviously, as we go through the agenda and have specific items, we will allow public comment on those particular agenda items.
Mayor, I'm leaving them as attendees because it's not clear if they do want to speak to other agenda items.
No, they need to go off of the main board. They'll raise their hands again if they want to speak.
Right.
She's saying the main board over on.
I got.
Yeah.
They need to go from panelists back to attendees.
They were all listed as attendees on my side.
Yeah, I guess they are. I don't know
Yeah.
why they're all showing up on the big board. Okay. All right, you guys can figure that out.
Yep. They're
All
not
right.
category.
All right, we will now go to item 4A, and I want to introduce Paul Rodriguez, who is going to lead us through, nope, we're not going to go to him first. We're going to go to the city engineer for the capital improvement program budget. Sorry. Skipping down too fast. Scott Allman.
This is a very short presentation and really deals only with this fiscal year's capital improvements. The overall program, the 5-year program, will be brought forward at a subsequent meeting to address all of those, all of the years. And we have a couple of items on the, or later in the meeting, sorry, that will address in more detail a couple of the projects that we're discussing here. So the items that we took to Planning Commission to seek their conformance with the general plan included 6 active items for this year. The first is the Pine Hollow Road upgrade. That's capital improvement project 10379. That project has had a bit of history. We transferred some Measure J money to it, began work on it, realized fairly quickly that one, the former city manager had asked that we increase the scope to include the entire length of our portion of Pine Hollow Road. And in doing so, realized that we needed to work in concert with the city of Concord because we share right-of-way, or we share a center line of a street. We have right-of-way on the west side and Concord on the east. And to be able to make the project come together and look as though it was meant to be was going to take quite a bit of coordination. And so we started down that road, which also led us to apply on a joint application with the city of Concord for a complete streets grant to study that street and put in find how we can put in the complete streets items for pedestrian, bicycles, green infrastructure, and make it coordinated between the cities so that it works together. We have yet to get a final response on the grant application. We're still waiting for word on whether we receive it or not. If we are successful, that study done by a consultant will take probably a year. And then once that is done and we are able to make decisions on design items, it will take the better part of a year to design that street, and then we would go to construction. So it's been through a bit of a metamorphosis, I guess you would say. And but it is still an active project in this year's CIP, and we will be hopeful to be successful with the grant through Caltrans. Second is the American with Disabilities Act Compliance Program. This is not something that we have immediate action on, but it is always included because every year this program receives Highway User Trust Account, HUDA, gas tax money. And so because it does receive money, we keep it in the program as an active project and have it meet conformance with the general plan each year. I believe will have locations where we will use some of this funding that has accrued. It's not a huge amount of money, and but we do try to make it have the best bang for the buck that we can. The third is the utility undergrounding program. This also is here because it receives credits every year through the through the Public Utilities Commission, through PG&E. It's not actual cash, but they are credits that we receive to be able to perform undergrounding work. Earlier this year, you will remember we established an undergrounding district, and that was to, as a requirement of PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission, to keep our project or keep our our Rule 20 program in the active category where we can protect the credits that we have. Unfortunately, the credits that we get are very small. They're approximately $21,000 worth of credits per year, and that's nowhere near enough to perform one of these projects. They're very expensive. The rough magnitude is about $1 million for 300 feet of undergrounding those overhead utilities. It's a very expensive process. But it's kept here, it's kept alive. We have a balance of credits, and we will, we do want to someday be able to use those if we can. The fourth project is the 2020 Neighborhood Pavement Preservation Project, which we have on the agenda later this evening to discuss in greater detail. This is the semi-annual project that we do to improve the pavement condition index for our city and keep our streets in good condition so that they're there to support our community. And then the last two are Clayton Community Park Field Number 1, which is a project that is partially funded, and we put it in on an annual basis, requesting additional funding, and when it is available, then we will be able to complete the rehabilitation of that of the field. Finally, the North Valley Park Playground Rehab Project, which is well underway and will be completed later this year, and will be able to be removed from the list because it will be a completed item. Some of the items that some of the work that we've done for fiscal year 1920, Pine Hollow Road upgrades, which we spoke about, the El Molino Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project, which is complete, Clayton Community Park Lower Field, we just spoke about, the North Valley Park Playground we just spoke about, which is currently underway, the Oak Grassland Savanna Management Project, which is intended to be in our capital improvement program with future funding that will allow us to garner grant funding through FEMA to work towards improving the oak grassland savanna areas and to mitigate invasive weeds. The intent of this is to have a program in place that we can fund long-term that will improve our resiliency against fire. The invasive weeds that come in are problematic and are a much hotter burn, and so to get the area back to the savanna area or the savanna environment is it's a positive thing for us for fire control. Emergency auxiliary power is also a future project which would purport to use FEMA grant funding that would become available to us to provide emergency power to the City Hall, library, and courtyard complex so that we can have that and use as an emergency operations center long-term. The school intersection enhancements project is underway. That's the scramble signal phase at the middle school and the improvements to the striping around the elementary school and the interactive stop signs that would be at Pine Hollow and Mitchell Canyon, as well as two that would be downtown to increase the awareness of those intersections. The 2020 neighborhood streets that we just spoke about. There's the Downtown Pedestrian Improvement Project, which is federally funded, and the federal funds were delayed into a future cycle. So that project, even though it did show up in fiscal year 1920, will actually not be able to be even looked at until future year when the federal funding becomes available to us. And then finally was the Green Infrastructure Plan, which was a requirement of our NPDS municipal regional permit, and that has been completed and is included in our annual report for our permit that Laura prepares. All of these items together initially were about almost $3 million in expenditures. Some have waned a little bit. Some of them are, have been completed. So anyway, that's just a real short presentation on this, and I'll be happy to entertain questions from you if there are some.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions of Scott on this?
If I can just add, Mayor, when you have your budget introduction, some of the items that Scott's gone over that were not included in the written report will be included in your budget as you typically receive every year.
Yeah, I'll save my question on the green infrastructure pot of money for that discussion.
I have a question.
Yeah, Jeff.
Just on a couple things that you had talked about, kind of going in order. On the underground credits, what happens if we do not use the credits for its intended purpose? How long do we have to hold the credits? And if something happens, what happens to that money?
Okay, that's a very good and very pertinent question, because the forming of the undergrounding district that we did was specifically to protect those credits. We were unable to do an underground project in the recent past because of the cost of it and the small amount that we gather in credits every year. Just the cliff notes on this, what got us to where we are today with this is a different city in a different part of Northern California forth a large project, undergrounding project. They did not have near enough credits to do the work. PG&E went to the Public Utilities Commission, asked them to give them credit to be able to borrow ahead. PUC came back and said, no, we're not going to do that. We want to look at who is active in the Rule 28 program and who is inactive in the Rule 28 program. And we're going to take the credits from the inactive cities and give them to this city to use since they really have a large project. That process was very involved and took time. And so many of the cities, like ours, went through the process to make ourselves active so that we didn't lose credits. And so that now we are shown and seen as an active community, and that should hold us into the foreseeable future where we would not, be at risk of losing those credits. But we will, at some point in time, have to. We're going to have to do a project, to be able to make use of the credits. Otherwise, they will be nothing to us. We won't have any benefit from them.
So this actual cash that we carry, and then it's not cash, right?
It's not cash.
So it's paper. It's paper credits.
It's paper credits, and the reality of how the program works is, if we were to come forward today with a project, we want to build, X numbers of feet, and this is the location. We would literally wait in line for about 5 years, waiting in queue for other projects to get out of ahead of us, where the cash that does come out, would be available for us to trade credits and have PG&E do the work for us. So even if we started today with saying, okay, we're ready to go, we would have 5 years in essence to wait, where we would gather additional credits at the $21,000 equivalent dollars a year. And then we could borrow ahead an additional 5 years. But even in doing that, we've got such a small pot that the project we could accomplish is pretty small.
Okay. So that's great. Thank you. On the community park, it kind of, the language that's being used here, I'm not exactly clear on what's happened in the past. It says that there's an estimate to finish the rehabilitation. So does that mean that there was work that was done, but it wasn't complete?
Yes, there was initial work that was done, but the intent was to put new turf into the park area, and
So this is turf?
that's underfunded.
Okay, so the unfunded or the remaining part of the project is new turf. Is that the bulk of the project?
That is what's remaining, and it's only 50% funded.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned the Savannah. It's not here listed specifically, but I do think it's a CIP fund, or it's a fund. Where is this Savannah?
All of our open space that we have that's around the city, especially that butts up against the state park, because really probably our largest risk, obviously we have risk from earthquake, but our largest risk, I believe, professional opinion, is fire, and a fire or wildfire potentially coming down from the park into town. Some of the open space, hopefully not ours, we try to maintain ours in a much better condition, has invasive weeds in it that are large, brush, which are a fire hazard. So our goal with this project that we keep in the CIP is to be able to garner funds that we would use to systematically and appropriately remove invasive weeds from the grass areas that we control, so that they're a lower fire hazard and are more easily fought as a fire if there were one. And the reason you put it in the capital improvement project and program like this is, if you are going to be able to garner FEMA funds in the future, you have to have a program or a project that you want to have funded. It has to be in the capital improvement program, even if it's there as a wish list or a currently unfunded project. If it's not in that program, FEMA won't talk to you about it. They will say you had no intent of doing this, so there's no reason for us to even talk to you about funding it. So we need to put that in there as a future project so that it's legitimately a part of what our plan is, so that when funding becomes available, we can match that to an existing plan, and we're not just trying to pull a project out of the air, so to speak. And the same with the emergency auxiliary power.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Scott? I don't see any. So we are looking for a motion. Don't all speak at once.
Mayor Pierce, it looks like we have one attendee with a hand raised.
Yes, and there is no motion we need to this was an informational presentation this evening.
Thank you. Okay, yes, we do have a speaker. So public comment on this item is open, and Bassam Altwell wants to speak, and we need to unmute him.
I'm trying.
There, no?
Why doesn't it not go? There we go. It said delay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Bassam,
Yes.
go ahead and speak.
All right. So I thank you, Scott, for the presentation, and I'm here to speak as a member of the community, not as a planning commissioner. Also, although I voted yes on this item during the planning commission, but I want to address item 2, which is the American with Disability Act. And when I mentioned that per Title 2 of the ADA 35.106, every city has to have a transition plan, an accessibility transition plan. And I'm not sure if the city of Clayton does have a transition plan that includes physical and program plan. And my comment really is regarding the $6,000, which I feel it's incredibly, it's so low that really even accumulating it for multiple years will not even cover the transition plan, mind you, the work that needs to be done. I have been volunteering pro bono my time to answer questions with the city, been working with Scott whenever he has questions, or with the city maintenance people. But I feel that the $6,000 is really very low, and I would like you to the council to consider raising that money. And there is no figure that I could give you personally until you guys know about the transition plan that you have and what kind of money that might be needed for that transition plan. So I would like you to consider raising that money. I seen this $6,000 this year. I seen it last year, and when it came in front of the planning commission, discussed it last year, and I don't think anybody brought it to your attention. So I'm thinking of me bringing it to your attention now. That's all, and thank you.
Thank you, Bassam. So that is one of the things that will be in the streets program coming up in another agenda item, correct, Scott? The Disabilities Act,
yes,
that kind of thing.
The $6,000 that is put there annually comes from our HUDA gas tax funds. Yeah, and that's the for that annual installment of ADA money.
Right.
So is this requirement that that Bassam mentioned about the transition plan? I'm not aware. Is that something that we have or yes? Okay.
Yeah, I think what maybe some clarification, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong. When the city does the street paving project or other types of work in right-of-ways, there's certain requirements that trigger to make any non-ADA areas ADA accessible. You've seen that before when we've done street work and we've gone in and done the corner areas of the putting in the ramps. This is kind of a separate pot, separate from that, because those monies are all kind of programmed through the streets project because we have to do the parallel areas there. This is just a standalone set of monies that would be done for kind of a one-off ADA ramp that would not be related to any requirement from street paving. And I'll let Scott, our city engineer, clarify.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly right. When we do street maintenance itself does not require an upgrade to the accessibility ramps. But when you get above maintenance and you get into the first layer of rehabilitation, and this is all very technically laid out by the Department of Justice, that they have decided what the thresholds are. You do have to upgrade the ramps. And so whenever we go do a rehabilitation, what's considered a rehabilitation on any of our streets, we do address all of the ramps that we touch by virtue of being in the street adjacent to that ramp. So those are considered in the project costs. And Laura's correct, the $6,000 is a set-aside fund for one-off type of issues that are not a part of a streets program, but we do, we need to address something. So it gives us an ability to have a fund to address things, not really on an emergency basis. I don't think that would be the appropriate way to say it, but it's not something that's planned as a part of a larger project.
And to the extent that the 6,000 or whatever is accumulated is not sufficient to cover any required upgrades, then we would still do the required upgrades, but we would just find the different funding sources. Is that how it would work?
Typically, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and they're being very diplomatic, but what we've learned through the Transportation Authority and other agencies in transportation, those curb ramps, the standards keep changing and they keep getting more expensive. And if you go to do a rehab on a street that already has one that was to code when you last did it, it probably has to be replaced with a new one with different standards. And to me, some of them you can't tell the difference. Honest to God, you cannot tell the difference between the old and the new, but you still got to replace them. So there probably is a difference. I'll give them credit. There probably is a difference, but it's annoying to have to replace all of them sometimes when it seems like they're perfectly good. So that's my editorial comment on that one. Okay, so this was an information item. Are there any other questions on this one? If not, then we will, and I don't have any other public comments on it, so we will go directly to item 4B. And Paul, you get to take this one away. This is the City of Clayton budget, and this is our first look. And we will have probably at least a couple more meetings on this, if not more. So it's all up to you.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. It's a privilege to be here for the City of Clayton's fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. And I'm going to kind of act as Laura's wingman through the PowerPoint, and she's going to present it, and then we'll be here to answer any questions anybody may have.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor and Council. And we've got our PowerPoint up now, and this is going to be an overview presentation on the draft 2021 budget. And if we can go to the next slide, John. There we go. Okay, so our outline tonight, we're going to go over the general fund, the 18-19 actual year end, which we want to show you those numbers, the 19-20 projected year end. And then we'll go into the revenue overview for fiscal year 2021, the expenses, the department expenses, the general fund reserve versus the appropriations, historical and trend analysis on that. We'll highlight, again, being transparent to the public, the information we have on our pension stabilization fund and the unfunded actual liabilities, and then the special funds. There are three we want to highlight tonight for the council, being our geological hazard abatement district, our neighborhood street lighting, and our stormwater. And then we'll get in some questions and take any direction that the council wants to give us. Our intention is to come back at an upcoming council meeting to do the formal introduction of the budget. And then at a subsequent meeting, you would take your public hearing and final action on the budget for adoption. So if I can go to the next slide, John. This is the good news. Fiscal year 18-19, the city closed its books. These were the audited figures with $333,300 in operational excess. These funds have yet to be assigned or designated for anything. So the council could provide direction in assigning these for one-time purposes. The staff also has some suggestions and needs in our community, and we thought this could be brought back for further decision and discussion at your meeting in June. And the other option, of course, is even if you're not ready in June, we could be directed to place those funds in a new account for unanticipated one-time expenses, some sort of a savings account that could be set aside and allow more time to discuss any expenditure the council might want to allocate for those funds. If I can have the next slide. For fiscal year 19-20, we are also projected to end with $146,019 in operational excess. However, I caution that these are not yet audited and will be brought back to the City Council after the audit is actually completed with the final status. But our finance manager, Paul, here is very confident that that should be a pretty close to a good number. Additionally, from fiscal year, prior fiscal year, we had $50,000 that was allocated for a green infrastructure plan. That project has been completed and filed with the state. We have $31,315 that is left as residual from that project, and it can also be reassigned for a one-time expense in fiscal year 2021. And staff will note later in the presentation that we do have a couple of one-time expenses for fiscal year 2021 that we could use those funds to cover. And that's our November election cost, and we've increased our budget for extra janitorial related to COVID. If I can go to the next slide. We're going to highlight here our fiscal Clayton revenues for fiscal year 2021. And if I can go to the next slide. Just to give you a trend analysis as to, for the public as well, as where our funds come from. We have basically four major sources of funds. We're very different from some of our surrounding communities, and to some extent very fortunate this time in COVID, that the City of Clayton does not have a major source of funding as its sales and use taxes. You see that that is our lowest revenue source in terms of from the sources of funds. Our property taxes is our largest source of fund, followed by franchise fees, and then our sales and use taxes. So you can see the trends there from 2012 to 2021 projected as to how those revenue trends have been over the years. If I can go to the next slide. This shows the revenues that the city receives, the sources that they come from. Property taxes, as I mentioned, is one of the largest sources of revenue from the city, but the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees is actually our largest. That was one of the flips the state made, where we used to get directly vehicle license fees, and they made some adjustments with that. So you can see between people's car registration, vehicle license fees, and the property taxes, that's the majority of our revenue. Again, franchise fees makes up the next amount, sales and use taxes, and then it's scattered amongst a variety of smaller pots of funds that are shown here on the slide. And business licenses is a small amount in this community, again, being more of a bedroom community with just a couple of shopping areas. It's 3.1%. A lot of our businesses are home-based businesses, and so the revenue sources are not very large for a community such as Clayton. If I can go to the next slide. You can see here how the percentage works in terms of where our major sources of revenues come from and what those dollar amounts are in our city budget. Again, showing that the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees being the largest, followed by the straight property taxes, then your franchise fees, and then your sales and use taxes at 9.7%. The RPTTF is the funds related to the recognized obligation payment schedules of our former redevelopment agency properties, where the state is providing direct funding to the city to continue to manage the wind down of the redevelopment agency through the successor agency. And so the total there is for the city's projected revenue for fiscal year 2021 is 4.8 million, and that shows you the total dollar amount there. If I can go to the next slide. Wanted to share with the public, we're all used to paying sales tax when we go shopping, and wanted to show you in this slide how that sales tax is divided amongst the varying taxing agencies. So of that 8.25%, the city gets 1%. So, it's not anything, we love the 1%, but again, it's not a huge amount out of the 8.25% that the public pays. And you can see there that the state gets the majority of it, followed by the state fund, and there's other state realignment funds. And at the end of the day, County Connection, our bus transportation system, gets 0.25%. BART gets 0.5%. The Transportation Authority gets 0.5%. So that just gives the public an understanding of the revenue that they pay in sales taxes, how much of that pie comes back to the city. If I can go to the next slide. The public's very familiar with paying their property taxes, and I know we often get calls here at City Hall, and I'm sure the council members as well receive, I pay a lot in property taxes. What are you doing with my money? Unfortunately, we wish all of those property taxes that they paid came back to their local community. Unfortunately, property taxes are also shared amongst a variety of taxing agencies, the largest being the school district, and then it goes down to the fire district, and you've got other schools, and the county gets a piece of the pie. So at the end of the day, out of everybody's property taxes that they pay, we get 6.6% to provide services to our community. So although we appreciate that 6.6%, we are a small piece of the overall pie, just a little bit above the college district. If I can go to the next slide. I'm going to give an overview of what we're expecting for the Clayton expenditures for fiscal year 2021. And if we can go to the next slide, just to kind of set the framework on finishing off revenues, one of the things we do is kind of show the city's actual revenues, our budgeted revenues, which are in blue, as it relates to the rate of inflation over time. That had our revenues kept pace with inflation and they were adjusted for inflation, you could see where we would actually be. Our revenues have not yet kept pace with inflation, and we are still doing everything we need to do to provide services for our community within the revenues we are receiving. But it would sure have been nice if it kept up with inflation. We could have done a lot more in our community. But just to give people an idea that although inflation has gone up in their own pocketbooks, the city's budget has been very conservative in terms of how they have done their revenues and expenditures. And if I can go to the next slide, we have here a 5-year budget trend, which we've provided to you in the past. And you can see that we have had an increase in operating expenditures from 16-17 through what we're projecting in 2021. And a lot of that's driven by your salary agreements with your employees, as well as benefits. And as part of that is we also have insurance costs going up. Contra Costa Water District raised their water bill. PG&E's raised its bills. All sorts of items of increases have been in there, but you can kind of get an idea of where we're going and where we've trended with our capital improvement program. It fluctuates a little bit from fiscal year to fiscal year, but it usually is around, plus or minus the $2.5 million mark. And then our successor agency funds have been declining, which we expect them to be because that is from the former redevelopment agency. So that will sunset out at a particular point in time. And then ideally, those properties will be put fully back on tax rolls, and we should see an increase in the base property tax revenue from that. So there might be an offset in that loss. I don't know if it'll be the full amount of what we're seeing here, but certainly that is something that we are monitoring as time goes on. And if we go to the next slide, it gives you an idea of what we're doing between 1920 and what we're projecting for 2021 in terms of the various departmental function areas. We have some departments that have gone down in expenditures and some that have gone up. And obviously the largest increase you see on this slide is the legislative department. It's a large percentage change, 20%. However, it's only an increase of a little less than $20,000. And the reason behind that is we have $15,000 in election costs for November that we have to budget for, and it comes out of that particular line item. We've got some public works cost increases related to some activities there. The community development department has some slight increases there, again related to wages and some of that, but some of that is also recoverable through deposit accounts we might have on file for development activity. General services is staying pretty much flatline, slightly down. The police department is up slightly. Again, that has to do with your MOU with your employees in that unit. And then the library budget is pretty much just an adjustment for inflation. Same thing with the engineering and our community park. So altogether, again, it's a $4.8 million operating budget, and we had 4.74 last year, so it's roughly about $100,000 increase over the current fiscal year. And if I can go to the next slide, this gives you a comparison by department of the usage of the operating expenditures. The police department is the largest, and that obviously is consistent statewide, nationwide. That department is the only department that runs 24 hours a day, 375 days a week, and including holidays and everything else. So that should be your largest piece of the pie. If you were to take the admin, finance, and legal department and double that and say that they have to work 24/7, you could take that 20% and make it 40%. But again, the police department has a large operational budget. They have equipment that's expensive, the police cars that are, expensive. All the tools that they need to do their job to keep our community safe also requires an investment. And so that's why they are more than 0.5% in almost all the city's budgets throughout, I would say the nation, but certainly in this area, in the Bay Area, probably the state as a whole. The smallest amount, obviously, in this is our legislative department, which some of those functional areas are with the city clerk. And then the community park is a general fund activity. These are general fund activities, not our special funds. And it uses about 6% of the general fund to keep the grounds maintained and the repairs going up at the community park, the restrooms, and that type of stuff. And then the community development department, obviously that includes the planning services and partially our code enforcement. And the activity there is probably what would be seen in other communities is a larger usage of demand from the public. If I can go to the next slide, you can see that same thing in dollar figures as the appropriations that we're looking at for 2021. Again, the police department being the largest and legislative being the smallest. So that adds up again to that $4.8 million. But you can see how it is spread in a different format if you're into looking at whole dollar figures. If you go to the next slide, we have the general fund reserves as compared to the actual appropriations, and those are kind of what's been budgeted or adopted by the council, and you can kind of see where our reserves have been, and they continue to be healthy, and our operating budget is below our reserves by a substantial amount. And so you can see how the forecast for 2021, based upon the funds that we've looked at in the past, if they were to be added into the reserve, that would increase it. But again, that's council's decision of what they want to do on the unexpended funds from the prior fiscal years. If I can go to the next slide, this kind of highlights our budget for 2021. At the end of this fiscal year, we're projecting to have $5.8 million in the fund balance. That's our reserve, otherwise known as the savings account for the community. Our checking account is our operating cost, and our savings account is the reserve, the fund balance. We have a total projected revenue of $4.844 million, and operating expenses at slightly above that at $4.871 million, and some hundreds of dollars there. So the net difference there is a deficit of $27,075 in that fiscal year. However, we expect that we have some one-time outlay earmarked also from the prior years of $33,542, and our fund balance at the end of the fiscal year would be slightly down at $5,819,501. So those are the balances of those two numbers there are the residuals that we have that we expect to have for the next year. So if we can turn the slide over to the next one, we can see here that shortfall of $27,075 could be covered for the residual funds I spoke about earlier from the green infrastructure project. So we do have $31,315 that can be directed to offset these one-time budget items, which would then result in a balanced budget with a positive of $4,240 at the end of the fiscal year. And go to the next slide. And I wanted to highlight a couple of items here. People are always interested in the city and what we're doing with the pension and pension rate stabilization fund the council set up several years back. Wanted to just give you the information about where that fund sits at this time and what is shown for next year in terms of the 2021 figure, which is not really adding anything. It's up to the council to make an addition into that. You can see in 18-19, you did direct a transfer in from the general fund of $100,000. And then there was some balances left over from the prior allocations you had made. If I can go to the next slide, this is the whole forecast of the unfunded liability showing how over time, how the payments increase and then how they decrease and where that looks based upon our actuarial report. And so you can see this is still the same information that you had last year, but I thought it was important to share that back out again with the community, where we're at in that process and where it goes to where it drops off in 2047 to $9,105 based upon the actuarial that was completed last year. But it just kind of shows you a snapshot of, and from what I understand from Paul, the finance manager, is the safety tier 1 ULA payment and the miscellaneous tier 1 payments are basically, within a couple $1,000s of what is shown on that. So we're pretty much on target with what that forecast was. So if I can go to the next slide, this was the same slide you'd seen last year, a forecast of through 18, how the unfunded actual liability trends are for public safety and the miscellaneous employees, where they've gone up, they kind of flatline, and then in the future they'll probably step up again, and then they start to drop down over time. And the next slide, if I can have that, kind of illustrates the journey that this takes through the end, where the funding costs get less over time. Again, that's changes on state requirements for different tiers of employees. New employees come in depending upon if they're already in the PERS system or not, but if they're not, they're coming in at a statute, a step that, or a classification that has them at less benefits, and that's less costly to the government agency. And if you can go to the next slide. This is the same slide you'd seen last year. It was again a forecast of the pension cost trend analysis that kind of goes through, in this particular case, through 2024. And as we go through the years, we're at 2020 right now, 2021. There's a slight increase that we see, and then it jumps up. And as the council recalls, you've set aside funds in that pension fund for usage, but it's not beneficial to pay PERS because they keep coming back. They take our money, and they have a tendency to then come back and readjust and say you owe them even more. So the idea is to hold that money and use it for direct payments when it is necessary, to where it can actually make an impact to our unfunded liability. If I can go to the next slide. We wanted to highlight three special funds. These are restricted revenue funds that have their own revenue sources to the council's attention. These three funds appear to be forecast to have revenue shortfalls, or getting very close to that, in fiscal year 21-22. These are all funded by special parcel levies on the tax bill, and modifications are likely to require a Prop 218 or similar process, either voter approval or not to receive majority protest. And we haven't looked into the details of each of these on those. We haven't had time for tonight's meeting, but the three we have are the Geological Hazard Abatement District, which covers a portion of the Oakhurst development area. The Fund 214 Neighborhood Streetlight Assessment District Fund, which is pretty much citywide. And your Stormwater Assessment District Fund 216, which is also citywide. If I can go to the next slide. Starting out with the Geological Hazard Abatement District, you can see that we don't receive a lot of revenue each year in this fund. It's roughly a little over $40,000, and we're projecting again approximately the same amount of revenue to be received in 2021. We have a beginning fund balance of $33,000. We have some expenditures, so in 2021, you're seeing that we'll have an ending fund balance declining of $27,162. And so over the several years out, we could expect that we're going to not have that fund balance to draw on to offset the cost of doing certain studies in the district and monitoring reports in the Oakhurst, in the Geological Hazard Abatement District. So that's a fund that we need to take a look at and determine what to do about the revenue stream. It is a jihad district, so there are certain studies and things we do want to take and continue to do so we can understand soil movement issues in that area. If I can go to the next slide. The Neighborhood Streetlight Assessment District, you can see there that our fund balance has also been declining between 18-19 and what we're projecting for 2021. You know, it's a drawdown of $15,000 to $20,000 a year. We have a little bit of time, but there again, you know, some of these funds could be used to do some things such as LED lights and some other things as well, but we don't have sufficient revenue in this pot to make major changes. We do make LED light changes when we're addressing street light outages and other things with our contractor on kind of the one by one little bit at a time. But again, this is an assessment district that is also declining in its fund balance, where the operational costs are exceeding the revenues that we're receiving. And a lot of that is, as you recall, even with LED lights and changes to more energy efficient lights, PG&E rates continue to go up. So we may not see the cost increase as much, but there still are increases that are occurring with our energy usage that's necessary for running the street lights. And the last one, if we can go to the next slide, is the Stormwater Fund. That again is a special revenue fund that gets revenues off of the people's property tax bills, specifically earmarked as ERU or stormwater. And again, we talked about this when I brought forward the levies to you back 2 months ago for the tax rolls. We are at our cap of $29 per runoff unit or equivalent runoff unit, which is basically a single family home type product, at $29 a year. We're expecting that in 21-22 we will be short revenue, and without any revenue, the alternatives would be for the city to subsidize it out of its general fund, And as you saw in the general fund, it's running just pretty close to balanced. You could draw down your reserve, of course, or you could look at trying to determine what would be an appropriate revenue increase. And I would not do it on the $29 because that's fixed. It would have to be a secondary revenue component that the public would have to consider to provide revenue into this pot of funds. The other thing working on this fund is we do have a new set of permit requirements that's expected to be issued sometime in December, January of this coming year, end of 2020, early 2021. And as the state water board typically does, is they usually don't make them less, they make them more. So we're expecting that we may see some demands of the cities that are going to cost us more money to meet their mandated requirements. Unfortunately, if we don't meet their mandated requirements, they have a way of fining us $10,000 a day in all sorts of ways, including authorizing, or they have the ability to have the state of California withhold our property tax revenue to pay for their fines to us. So that they're all the state agencies, so they do work that way. So we will be monitoring this, and we are participating actively in the permit reissuance process. Scott, your city engineer, Scott Allman, and myself have been doing that. Time will come when the council will be asked to participate in public hearings before the water board to impress upon them the concerns of the fiscal issues. And I will tell you, seeing the budget here that we've just gone over with you, the fact that we're projecting a $4,000 surplus, I think we're probably one of the few cities in this county, or certainly in this region, that is seeing something balanced in their budget for next fiscal year based upon all the fiscal impacts that the cities are seeing because of their sales tax reliance for and the impacts they've had for COVID-19. So if I can go to the last slide, please. I think it's the last one. I have questions, but if I can go to the next to the last one, the next one. We'll go back to questions, but I do want to say that we would like to see some direction at least on the $333,300. If you would like to bring that back for discussion or just put into a holding account for future allocation so that once you're done with the budget, we can bring that back in July to you. You can have conversation about what you would like to do with those funds. And we are looking for direction so that we can include in the 2021 budget the reallocation of the unspent $31,315 from the Green Infrastructure Plan to cover the election costs and the extra janitorial costs for fiscal year 2021. So with that, I'll go back a slide if you can, and then we'll open this up to questions. And as I said, Paul is here. He's got all the details on all those spreadsheets that you receive for all of the department funds and all the special funds. So that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Laura. We appreciate that. And I will go to questions, and it would be very helpful if I could see my council members. Thank you. We may be flipping back and forth. Questions, CW? And I see, I'll make the whole circle.
CW is on mute.
CW is
Thank
muted.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have no questions.
Oh, okay. Questions. Jim?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Number one, and this is just a generic question for Paul. With all the COVID-19 situation that's happening, have we seen a softening or anticipate a softening in our revenue stream?
That's a great question, and Councilman Diaz and Laura kind of alluded to that, to the answer here just a moment ago when she mentioned that given that we're really not super dependent upon sales tax revenues, we're not really getting hit that hard. Revenues are a small percentage of our revenue sources for the general fund. We did forecast a decrease in sales tax revenues for both 1920 and 2021. We engaged the services of HDL, Corn and Cone, sales tax they gave us a sales tax projection, and our revenues look good too, as compared to a lot of other cities throughout the state. But again, our major sources of revenue, particularly our property tax related and VLF fees, we're doing great. So it doesn't hit us that hard.
Yeah, and let me just follow up on that. I think the short answer is there was a slight adjustment downward to be conservative. This is a conservative budget, which we've done in the past for this council and this community. So this is conservative budgeting. It is possible. There's been some changes made and we don't have the exact numbers. It's hard to project. With the Wayfair decision, which was for the internet sales, that is now pooled into the county and then reallocated back per capita to the local jurisdictions. We understand the county believes they're going to see a spike in that for the quarter that we had with COVID as everybody ordered toilet paper from Amazon and got it delivered, as many other things as well. So we expect that there could be an increase, but it's very hard to forecast that at this time because that decision just came out last year and it was very hard for them to understand it. And just as they were trying to get a trend on it, COVID-19 hit. So all in touch with the county and their staff to when we hopefully we'll have some updated information, but it's looking like that won't come until July or August from them when they actually see the actual numbers.
And back to the budget for the unfunded liability with for pensions and that. I know that our friends up in Sacramento are adjusting that percentage rate annually. Where are we now on that, and what do we anticipate?
Which rate are you? Which rate? I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the investment rate, Jim?
Right.
It was 7 3/4 for many years, and they adjusted it down. What, 7.5?
I think it's at 7 right now.
Yeah, we can get back to you with that information. We can look that up and get that back to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Just as long as we're sensitive to it and looking for whatever changes they may decide to do. All right. Thank you.
The that you saw included an assumption made for them making those adjustments over time so that our cost would continue to rise as their investment rate return went down.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Tuya and then Jeff.
I have a couple of questions. So a little bit to follow up on sort of how conservative we are in predicting the impacts from COVID-19. So two-part question on that first. So in terms of, have we anticipated any kind of reduction in, use of city facilities? Like we rent some facilities, the Endeavor Hall, the parks and stuff like that. Is that already included in the numbers that you provided, or is that even significant enough to factor in?
Well, I mean, they're not insignificant to the people, of course, who are paying them and wanting to use those facilities, but we did project lower use for park facilities and the rental of the various buildings owned by the cities. We reduced those numbers.
We did that also for the closeout of this current fiscal year because we've had, some activities our Little League did not play. Our soccer teams are not playing on the field. So that kind of overlaps with this fiscal year closeout as well as looking into the beginnings of next fiscal year. So they were all reduced downwards. So that was accounted for. And just to point out, we also increased our janitorial cost. We doubled it over on all of our facilities from what we pay normally to address potentially having to increase the janitorial services related to COVID, depending upon what the health department advises or the county public health department advises for cleaning facilities once they reopen to the public.
And then just by way, as an example, park use fees, our actual revenues in fiscal year 18-19 were $40,941. The budgeted revenues for 19-20, last year's budget were $43,200. We're actually projecting that we're only going to get about $16,300 because of COVID, and likewise our budgeting for 2021 $16,000. So the long answer to your very good question is that yes, we have made adjustments for COVID with both expenditures and revenues.
Okay, and then kind of related question. So I don't think we're really impacted on this, but I want to just flush it out. So I know that other cities have actually legislated in terms of the rental payments that commercial tenants have to make or don't have to make. But now there's also, and we haven't done anything like that, but there's now a legislation pending in the state Senate SB 939 that would, I think, excuse rental payments on commercial facilities for a year. I don't know if that's going to pass, but I'm thinking, do we as a city, I mean, I don't think we're really renting any facilities. I mean, maybe the gym, but I don't know if there's anything else that could get impacted if something like that was passed.
No, and I'm not clear if that was for commercial businesses versus facility rentals either. I haven't looked into the legislation, but right now our user groups for this year have indicated that they're not going to be utilizing city facilities at least through till the beginning of fall. And I will find out tomorrow, because the Clayton Theater community is meeting tonight to determine whether they will at all have a fall show based upon the guidance from the county and the state health departments on, you know, social distancing still likely to be in place, how do you do a play or a show. So that's the only group. But we're not renting out picnic facilities or anything like that. It's first come, first serve. So there's no revenue. I don't expect, you know, possibly soccer might, but, you know, we're about a month away from August, I think, is when the soccer folks start up. So we'll see where that lends itself for a field rental. And All Out Sports League is back in our gymnasium at the shared gym with the school district. They are offering camp classes for basketball camp for youth in accordance with the state guidance and the county health guidance. And they did not pay any rent when they were not in there, which is appropriate. And so they've started back up again, and the next rental payment would not be until after they've completed 30 days there. So that's the terms of their rent agreement. And they've indicated that they don't see any impacts to what they're doing and rent. And if there is an issue, they will certainly bring it to my attention. And as the council has delegated to the city manager to make adjustments administratively for those facility rentals as appropriate.
Okay. And then a quick question, and you don't have to have the answer right now, but when you bring it back, I would definitely like to know, you know, we set aside that fund for the UAL expenditures, and I'd like to just know what the balance of that fund is. I think it's a couple $100,000, but, you know, if you have it there, great. If not, just bring it back when the item comes in.
I can find it. Right now, we're projecting at the end of 2021 an ending fund balance, which is really all cash, of $286,551, and that's what, you know, as Laura had mentioned, you know, council could decide to take some of the 1819 excess, for example, and direct some of that to that fund, which of course would increase that fund's balance accordingly. Okay, and then just two other comments. So you mentioned in the presentation that we have these three funds, special revenue funds, that have shortfalls, you know, coming in the next couple years. As a general principle, I don't like drawing on our reserves for operational expenses. So I would like for us to have a discussion at some point in terms of what are the other options. So, you know, just an item for future that, you know, it would be great for us as a council to brainstorm and just hear what the options are. And then you talked a little bit about in the beginning of the fiscal year 18-19 operational excess and what to do with that and looking for direction for that. So it sounds like for the 2021 year, we will have that $27,000 deficit or negative. So I'm wondering if that can be used towards that. But in terms of what to do with the $333,000, I mean, I would think that we want to have a fairly thorough discussion in terms of where those monies are going. But I know, and I think, I bet Jeff is going to mention this as well, but I think one of the items that I think several of us have heard recently is the school crossing guard. So maybe that's something that we can look into. But, you know, if there's any other, you know, thoughts from staff, I would certainly welcome those and for us to take a look at it. Maybe we're not ready to make, you know, full expenditures, and maybe it's better to create that unanticipated future fund so that we have something sort of ready to go. You know, let's take a look at those items for sure. And that's it.
Just to clarify, Councilmember Catalano, the $333,300, the staff is not suggesting we use that to cover any shortfall for this year. We have the $31,000 remaining from green infrastructure that would balance this year's budget. And then, as you mentioned, one of the options would be to take that $333,000, and if you want to it's up to the council. If you want to allocate it to something to be done for next fiscal year, like school crossing guards, I've heard that. I think that's about $14,000. And we can further look and bring back recommendations to you in the budget introduction about if that's an area you want to fund, where those funds could come from.
Yeah, I would welcome the discussion among the full council in terms of whatever ideas staff has, and then whatever we do with that, or whether we leave some of it in a fund. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff?
I have a lot of questions, but I know that there's people that want to make comments. So can I hold those until, and so we can get to comment a little bit?
Do you want to go to public comments before you make your comments? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine with me, just because I know that there's folks and it's getting kind of late for some people. They've probably been on for like an hour and a half.
Do you have any specific questions of staff you want to ask?
The one overarching question that I would have is that it does appear that we are coming in consistently under budget each year. And I think, from a fiscal responsibility perspective, I think that's very good. But I don't think it's as good from an accuracy perspective. And so my question would be around, why do we think that we consistently come in with surpluses each year?
Well, one answer is if you're budgeting for a fully staffed city, and for example, right now we're without a city manager. Of course, we're going to come in under budget with our wages and benefits. I'll give you an example from another city where I was the finance director. Is consistently the police department was understaffed to the tune of 6 or 7 police officers. And my first year there, I was going to budget that accordingly because I wanted to have the budget be reflected more accurately as to what I knew the expenses were probably going to pencil out to be, but did not end up doing it in that manner in the long run, because then the comment was made, well, I'm slashing the police department's budget and cutting staff, which wasn't what we were doing. We were merely projecting what we thought the expenditures were going to actually be. I think you're right. I mean, accuracy is certainly important, but I think it's just as important, if not more so, to budget your revenues conservatively, which is to say, I don't want to call it worst case scenario, but if what could our expenditures really potentially be, and how, if they're fully expended, if they come in under, that's great.
And if I can just add, Vice Mayor, there have been some years in the past where our revenues were only at $46,000 or $36,000 above the expenditures. So we were very close. And I would say in a $5 million roughly budget, that's squeaking it. I mean, a lot of cities usually have a little bit more left over at the end of the year, a little bit of flexibility. And just looking back over the last few fiscal years, we've had ebbs and flow in staffing. You didn't have a full-time community development director. You didn't have a full-time finance manager. You had some vacancies in the maintenance department. You also had vacancies in the police department. We're just now getting close to, practical purposes, fully staffed. So the budget you're looking at includes that. And then there was some work that for this fiscal year, we don't expect to be completed, that we normally would have contractors do outside because of COVID-19, because they were not able to come in and service us for some of our ground squirrel abatement and other things until more recently. So there are some savings that come out year over year because we don't expend everything we thought we could have done, because we just didn't have all of the manpower, the resources to do it. So that's why we are projecting, again, that we expect to have the expenses as we're projecting, because that's just based upon fully staffing and doing all of the things that are in the budget. And at the end of the year, sometimes not everything gets done that we plan for.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Underestimating revenue and overestimating expenses is a safer way to go. So, but we got to be sort of close to the target, but we can't always plan for some of these contingencies. Okay, let's go to public comment on the initial budget presentation. We're not going to take action on this tonight. We probably won't take action for another couple of weeks on this, but we are certainly open to your comments. So if you'd like to comment on the budget, please raise your hand. I don't see anyone on the phone, so we'll go to Lainey King for the first public comment. And you'll have 3 minutes, Lainey. Can we get her up so that she can speak? I see her hand raised, but I don't see, there she is. Now we need to unmute her.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Lainey. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I just, I've addressed the council before. My son was involved in the accident near Mount Diablo Elementary, and I had advocated public safety around the school, and I have to say that, you know, our PSC was able to fund a crossing guard this last year, and it was a huge benefit to the campus. It was the place where she was crossing by the marquee on Pine Hollow and Mount Zion. Honestly, she almost got hit several times a day. It was very dangerous and very necessary to have her there. So I just wanted to say, if it's at all possible to have the council pay for a crossing guard, I'd really advocate for you to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. And I don't see any other hands raised. Yes.
Mayor Pierce,
yes.
City
Dana Corshane.
Hi, Mayor Pierce. I do have one public comment that was emailed into me, and it's actually along the same lines as Ms. Klein King. If you'd like, I can read that for the record.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. This is from Sharice Khan. It says, Dear Clayton City Council members, I'm Sharice Khan, a local parent and member of Mount Diablo School Board. I'm writing today to encourage you to include funding for crossing guards in your budget 2021, particularly the one at Mount Zion and Pine Hollow across from the marquee at Mount Diablo Elementary. This is a crucial item and important responsibility of the city to protect the safety of children in Clayton. We are grateful for the traffic safety improvements that the City Council has made at the middle school this year. I hope that you continue to see student safety as a priority and fund a crossing guard for our youngest students. Please include the appropriate $12,000 to $14,000 to cover this for the 2021 school year. And this concludes Ms. Sharice's email.
Thank you very much, Janet. And we have one other speaker with their hand raised. Dana, can we get her up? Need to unmute. There you go, Dana. You should be ready to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I was currently the crossing guard up there. I do agree with Lainey. There were several times I was almost hit by people that just run right through the stop sign. And if I'm out there in a bright yellow vest with a red stop sign and they're still doing that, I'm in fear for the kids to get hit on a daily basis. Would like to advocate to have the $12,000 to $14,000 still added onto your budget to fund the crossing guard, and I will continue doing that as well.
Okay, thank you. We have one other speaker, Kate Laverick. Need to get her in here. There she is, unmute.
Thank you, Mayor Pierce. I just wanted to echo Lainey Klein King's, Sharice Khan's and Dana Cushane's comments in the importance of funding that crossing guard up by the school. It's also an essential part of the image of safety that we have in Clayton, and for it to go unfunded for another year, it does damage the reputation that we put out there around the county. So I feel like it's another important thing to fund for the upcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I don't see any other hands raised. I'm watching the board. No other hands raised. So I'm going to close the public comment on this item and bring it back to the council. Jeff, do you want to kick off the comments?
Sorry, I have a mute on my mic. So, yeah, it's one of the things that I had been advocating for a while, and I think the comments from the folks kind of reflect my thoughts. I don't really need to, I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think that we can find the funds for that additional crossing guard, and I would advocate that we do that. I think that would be a wise use of funds. But, just in general, I had some other questions regarding the budget, and I was hoping that we could kind of get into some of the detail. I know that we have it's different than we've done in the past. This is a committee of the whole, and usually we'd have like a working committee. So some of these questions are they could be somewhat mundane, but there are some things that stand out. I think in general, I would like to see, if we could get a breakdown of the special restricted funds, a future look on, the projected inflows, outflows, and then bump that against the historical run rate of those. I think if we did like a 5-year look back and, a 1 to 2 year look forward, that would be useful to assess whether, how we want to approach addressing those shortfalls that look like they're going to be coming up in the next year or so. And so I think that would be useful to do for informational purposes. And then also, I know that there's a line item budget that you prepare, and what would be helpful is if anything that has a variance from projection of whatever set, you could establish what you think is appropriate, a dollar amount and percentage amount, and then with an explanation of the variance. I think that would be useful for analysis purposes, because there's several lines across multiple funds, and rather than having, going through each line, I think that would be really helpful. And that's usually how I would expect to see a budget variance being presented, because what I see is, there's the prior year actual, current year budget, current year projected, and future year budget. And so like, when you look at these, there's some items that do stand out. For example, computer services in the current year, or in the next year, is budgeted at 0, even though the current year projection is 40,000. My suspicion is that this is being captured in different line items.
To a grant fund.
Yeah, there was a lot of movement around in the budget, and I understand your question, Vice Mayor. Some funds were, for computer purposes, the council had allocated specific funds for a one-time, 1 year only, and then when we were seeing recurring costs, we were able to utilize some other funds, some special funds that are only allowed to be in some of Paul's computer work. We moved over to the Comcast grant funds and out of the general fund. And part of that was to help balance your budget.
Okay, so maybe what you're talking about then is some of these line items, like the computer fund, to give us the color of money that is funding various pieces of it. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think, what I'm really going for is like some kind of the context behind it, just so that it's, it would help the assessment of where we're allocating our priorities. So I guess there's one item here. Where is it? So let's see. Property tax. We are projecting a 3% increase in property tax from projection in the following year, and a 5.5% increase over the current year budget. How fleshed out is that number? Because that's our biggest source of funds, and so I'm curious, like, what are the inputs that go into it that brought us to essentially a 5.5% over current year?
So you're talking the 4.9%.
The projected revenue, Vice Mayor Juan, for the reason it's 5.5%, just looking at secured property taxes, is for 1920, it was actually budgeted at $908,000, $907,800. It's actually projected to come in higher. I think it, generally, and it just, I don't have all my worksheets in front of me, but that's probably pretty close to the 957 increase over projected amount is only a 2% increase. But when it's looking at, it's comparing the change from the prior year budget as opposed to what's actually forecast to come in.
It includes capturing some property resales where you might have had a home that was previously assessed at 300, 500,000, and it's now resold years later at 800,000 to $1 million plus. So there is some turnover in Clayton of home ownership, as well as the base property tax increase of the 2% ad valorem. So you've got.
Yeah, you would expect to see a minimum of 2%, and then the delta would be the churn over new value, right? So it's really, I think, that becomes a function of your unit, how many units you're moving each annualized period. So I don't know what level of depth we went into to say, is that a reasonable number, since that's our biggest number? So that's really my question. But if
we got a 2% increase over what we're projecting, which happens to be a 5.5% increase actually over what was budgeted last year. Again, last year, property taxes, secured property taxes were budgeted at $907,800, which is more than likely it's a 2% increase over the 18-19 budget. And then, as Laura had mentioned, the projected revenues are higher, most likely because there were some home sales. But then again, when we budgeted for 2021, we're going to take the projected revenue and increase that by 2%, which just happens to be a 5.5% increase over what was budgeted last year.
Okay. And then the other line item that seemed strange, that I question about, is in Department 06 in police, we're looking at, for overtime, we're looking at $100,000 in proposed for future year, but the current year we're projecting 125. Seemed like a big delta. Is that overtime realistic, given?
We budgeted, so the total police overtime, we moved 25,000 into the SLESA grant fund. So to balance the general fund out, the supplemental SLESF fund is a police officer grant fund, and it's a separate restricted fund, and we can use some of those grant funds to cover overtime. So in order to help balance the general fund, we originally had $125,000 of overtime budgeted in the general fund, but we moved 25,000 of that over into the SLESA fund.
Okay, so it's relocated in a different place, essentially. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Would it help, Jeff, if we added a notes column on the right-hand side of this to kind of explain some of these deltas or where it moved?
Yeah, that context is useful, and that's what I was saying earlier. I guess there's one other question I had before. When we talked previously, I think a few months ago, when Scott had talked about potential costs for the interactive street signs connected to the traffic signal near DVMS, he was going to look into what the potential cost was. Did we capture that item? Is that captured in one of the projects? I couldn't tell. I think he was thinking like it could be in the neighborhood of 70,000 or something like that.
You know what? Let me follow up with him, Vice Mayor Juan. I don't know if Scott's still listening in. I see his name up there.
I'm here. It's captured in a capital improvement project, and it actually was budgeted at $100,000. So it is there, and it is underway.
Okay, great. And that was for looking into the interactive signs, not the work that we had already approved, right?
When you say interactive, are you talking about the ones in Marsh Creek Road median?
Yes.
Yeah, connected to the light. That was the one that we had. There was some more investigation that was needed to determine feasibility and cost.
we're still trying to determine the feasibility, if we can actually get connectivity there. And
so is that the one, when you said 100,000, is that what you were talking about, or are you talking about something else?
The whole project that includes the interactive stop signs, the restriping, the rework of the signal at the middle school to allow the scramble cycle, all of that was included in that capital project. It was not just the interactive signs in the median. It was all of it together.
Okay. And so to the extent that that amount comes in higher due to whatever circumstances are necessary to affect that, then we would need to come back to it. What number is that on? Sorry, I'm trying to find that fund.
Look on your page 55, I think, Vice Mayor Juan.
55 of the staff report of the budget worksheets.
CIP number 10448, school intersection.
Correct. 10448.
55. All right, cool. Thank you. That was what I had.
Okay. Other questions? Jim, your finger's been in front of the camera a few times. Did you have questions?
No, I was just checking to see the wait list. No, that's all. No, you've already answered my questions.
Okay. CW, did you have anything else?
Well, I agree. I think we can easily find $14,000 for the school crossing guard, but where are we now? And we also should find some money for a better Wi-Fi signal at City Hall.
Yes.
Fine. You guys are.
No, it's not, Laura. You faded
We're
out.
never going back to City Hall.
I'm direct wired. This isn't even wireless. This is all direct connect to Comcast.
Well, that may be, but it still faded a couple of times and you stalled. So we can.
On my end, you guys have done that. So I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere in Zoom land.
Anyway.
So since we're not taking any action, what is the conversation here? I mean, basically, we're looking.
I think it's comments, and we've heard some of those. I actually had some comments as well. I want to get back to my marked up page on my iPad to where I wrote my questions. One of them is kind of a general question for probably Laura and Mala. Some of those special funds, the stormwater fund, we have seen over several years, and Jeff, you'll see that background when they put together the history on that, has been declining, and we've seen this shortfall coming for, 5-6 years at least. And every time they add more requirements, we know that it gets worse. So rather than pulling out of the general fund for that, I think we'd be smart to look at how do we augment that fund. The same with the residential streetlight fund. We've seen that one coming for probably at least 10 years, if not longer. It's been a pretty gradual decline in the reserve there for that one, but there's no escalator in it. It's a flat fee every year. So, eventually the cost of living catches up, and certainly our electricity rates have done that. So I guess one of the questions that I had, and I don't need an answer off the top tonight, but I would like to look at, particularly for the streetlight fund and the stormwater fund, if there's, I would assume they would have to be separate measures if we were doing a Prop 218 mail out ballot, that kind of a thing, and the timing on how that could work, versus a discussion on whether we would want to put it on the ballot. Can we, if we do a Prop 218 ballot, can we include an escalator? I don't know the answer to that. Because it seems like a CPI escalator, maybe a not to exceed 3% or something like that, might be a prudent thing to do, like we've done with the Grove Park Fund, for instance. We built in a not to exceed 3%, but a CPI escalator there. And then for the stormwater fund, I don't know, but what we need to recalculate what we estimate that's going to cost us, and not just increase, by CPI where we are now, but try to figure out, and maybe this requires an engineering study, I don't know, what we think it's going to cost us to get caught up. Now, I know you said we had a unspent green infrastructure fund of $31,000. That came out of the general fund to begin with, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it wasn't out of a special fund that can only be put in one location. It's something we allocated because we had no other funds.
Correct. That was your excess from, I think it was 16, 17 or something along that line.
Right, that's what I seem to remember. And that was for the NPDES improvements that we had to do, or we would get fined by the stormwater folks. Okay, anyway, those are a couple of questions I had that don't have to be answered, as I say, tonight, but those might be things that we would want to consider going forward. I don't think much of anybody wants to turn off street lights in their neighborhood for those neighborhoods that have them. I don't. And most of our neighborhood doesn't want them, so don't think about expanding it. But I do think we need to look at how to make those funds more solvent over the long term. How we handle the geological hazard abatement district is trickier because we've gone to the ballot on that several times and lost overwhelmingly on that in the past. And that's a rethink, and that's probably a separate study session to figure out how we address that whole issue. So that was one suggestion going forward. I had a couple of questions on what some of these line items actually mean and are referring to, but I think some of them, for instance, on the summary pages at the beginning, don't let my page go away, on account 7373, education and training, that's overall. Does that include things like League of Cities, or does that include, I don't know what that includes. Is that, because it's the overall budget here, not the police budget, does that include post-training and stuff like that too?
I believe it does, and includes a large majority of that. We don't have anything budgeted for regular staff in here at this point, so it's typically been mostly the post stuff.
Okay, because that's a pretty big jump. Yeah. I mean, it goes from 15,000 to 20,000. So
we have newer officers that need to get.
Okay.
I mean, we've got 2,000 in community development. I mean, we've got.
And we also had put some in there for the community development director for some training and other things that he had requested. Subdivision map updates and some other stuff.
Okay. You know, we might think.
I apologize to council. We didn't give you the narrative that went with this, which we normally would do.
No. I get that. I get that. And that's why I'm just asking a couple that jumped out at me as being significant increases. Another thing that occurs to me that we might want to think about, if we can find the room in the budget for it, would be some, and I don't know, maybe you've got it in there, is something like sending the planning commissioners to the Planning Institute that the League of California Cities does, because that's really valuable land use rules training. And I've always found those training sessions to be far more interesting and useful, frankly, than what they give us as council members. Just because you learn the nuts and bolts of how land use law works and that sort of thing. And I think that kind of thing would be helpful for relatively new planning commissioners who've never had that training. So that might be a thought to think about
I will double check that. As I recall in the past, every time we've had a new planning commissioner come on board, we have offered the league training for them to attend, and they have participated in it, as I recall.
Some
like
have, yeah.
$200 per person, I think it is for the training.
Yeah. Anyway, and if they're holding it by Zoom classes, it might be a whole lot less.
Yeah.
You don't have hotels to have to pay for, that sort of thing. Another question would have been down under water service. I see that you made a significant bump there of about $13,000. Is that enough for the what looks like a 9% rate increase? I didn't do the math to figure out what the rate
Is
increase
that on, Mayor?
Yeah. That would be line 7338 in the landscape maintenance fund.
Oh, landscape maintenance fund. Thank you.
Sorry. The print
Yes,
on these pages is very small.
Yeah, I know. I tried to get it in there at the last minute. Yeah, that's based upon a 6.6% average increase because of the way our district is weighted in different zones.
Okay.
So that was based upon, the historical usage of what we've been doing, plus looking at a 6.6% increase. Now, if the water district comes out in January and makes a change different than that, then yes, that adjustment would need to be made at mid-year. And that's a special fund, so it would come out of the fund balance.
Right.
If we underestimated.
I seem to remember somewhere in the narrative, you talked about the equivalent of a 9% increase over the course of the year. Is that right? A 6-point-something percent for the 1 year and then more? Am I misremembering that?
Yeah, it says it's the resulted in increases from 6 to over 9%. So.
Right.
It depends which prior year period you were looking at. So yeah, it's like a 6% on average. So
okay.
Some zones are higher and some are at lower rates.
Okay.
Based on where the meters are.
I'm just worried that several of these things, like the PG&E bills, are going up far faster than the cost of living. And
we have put it at higher than the CPI.
Okay. Okay. That's good. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to the narrative when you get to it. And I think we've all asked some questions. I think, Jeff, your idea of maybe an extra column on here that could be one with some notes that talks about where some of these things are funded or how we might have used a grant to fund something that used to come out of the general fund or something like that. That would make it easier for most folks to understand rather than it looking like it got zeroed out and it actually just wound up somewhere else.
Yeah, typically you would see like something that does some conditional thing that highlights anything that has a threshold dollar amount and a threshold percentage. That would be useful.
Yeah, because I think your computer IT services is a perfect example. It goes from 10.7 to 0, and if there was a box on the column on the right that said, here's where it's coming from now, it's not coming from general fund, it's coming from a grant or whatever.
We can certainly address that. Typically, the way we've done it, just because there's not enough room on this page to make the numbers work with the notes on there, whether we added as footnotes to the bottom of the page, but we also typically included those changes in the narrative to each of those departments so you can follow along what's changed from one year to another as well, which we will do again and take Vice Mayor Wan's suggestion as part of putting it into the context of where those budget sheets are as well.
Right.
And I think maybe a dollar threshold would be better than a percentage threshold because increase because
no, it should be. It's an and, not or.
Okay.
It needs to be both dollar and percent.
If you change a $100 item by $10, that's a 10% increase. I mean, in other words.
Yeah, but that's why you have an and criteria, the union of, not an or criteria that is one or the other. It must be both. And then you would explain it. Does that make sense?
We'll work on that. By a certain percentage and a certain dollar amount. So if it meets both of those thresholds.
That way you don't have to explain $10 change over $100.
Sure. I'm just trying to get a concept of what you want as far as, I mean, as Laura mentioned, I mean, we don't have a lot of room. I mean, we don't have a lot of room on this page, or
and make it readable for you.
To make it readable and explainable, I'm looking for direction as to where you would want this on the document.
First go to landscape.
Landscape's good. And I review most of the stuff in Excel anyways. Like I don't look at the page, so I don't care how small it is.
Well, the public document doesn't often have a lot of the staff working footnotes either that it's in a different Excel format, so we can see what we can pull forward and add into the document for the public.
I think that would be helpful for the public to understand it. Some of us have a little more history, but the public certainly doesn't. And this is great for as far as you've gotten, and certainly the result looks really good. And let's hope that the numbers as we finish the fiscal year show that we're on target and the projections are hanging in there. And let's hope everybody bought more toilet paper at Safeway than we thought, so the sales tax actually goes up. That would be lovely. But any other things the council wants brought back when we look at this again? How many?
Well, I forgot to thank Paul, because I think, coming in late in the game, you did a yeoman's effort here trying to get this put forward. So I forgot to mention that right from the get-go. I think, I looked at it, I think it looks pretty good. I would, as we talked about in the beginning, as a lot of our guests kind of mentioned, I do, in the next pass, I would really like to see the increase in funding on the police. I believe the crossing guard is in the police fund.
Yes.
And I think
I'd like to see that there.
Isn't that in there?
Suggestion with the crossing guard. I mean, for sake of discussion, to move that, if we add an additional crossing guard, to take that out of the general fund. I mean, it could still be a general fund, but out of the main general fund, transfer revenues from the general fund into another fund to take care of that crossing guard. That way, it's separate and it's discrete, and it shows the public that we're covering that cost.
We'd create a line item in the police budget for the crossing guard. What we need to do is, we don't have the revenue in her department or from the general fund, and it's $14,000 a year. Certainly we could utilize and would bring back that, out of that $333,300, we can carve out $14,000 for the crossing guard, at least for next year. And if there's more revenue than we see in trends, we can, readjust back. But right now we've moved a lot of things into grants to make the budget balanced. You don't have a lot of wiggle room unless you cut something else out of your budget, of your general fund. So I would be looking for council, if they're comfortable, we could come back and utilize some of that $333,300 for the crossing guard, up to approximately $14,000. And it might be less because they may not start in fall, in August. But earmark that for the crossing guard.
No.
Yes,
You're done with some teaching. I know.
Let me ask a question then on that. In the police department budget, which is on page 9 of the staff report, line 7408 is crossing guard services. Is that the current crossing guard that we pay for?
Yes.
So we would need to double that if we're going to add the one at Mount Zion and Pine
I
Hall.
would recommend you could just track that as a separate project, as Paul recommended, and we can move funds from your unexpended operational excess, at least for next year there, and see how it goes. And if sustainable revenues end up picking up, then we can certainly look at the regular revenue stream to pick that up in the future. But if that's one area the council is, at least direction-wise is comfortable with, we can make sure we include that in the documentation we bring back to your budget introduction.
I
think that'd be good.
You're hearing.
Okay, certainly can do that.
Julia?
So I was going to say exactly the same thing. I said my other comments already, but I just want to thank Paul. I know you've not been on staff very long, so to not only catch up on our budget and how we do things, but to actually produce a budget for next year and work on that. Thank you very much. So appreciate the work.
Exactly. He started here in Clayton on April 7th, people. This is only June 10th. And so 2 months, feet to the fire, you have done a yeoman's job, and we really appreciate it. So that's part of the reason we didn't have a budget introduction in May, is so we could give him time to get this done. And if that means we got to have meetings till June 30th to get it done, I'm good with that.
And then the other two pieces of direction that staff would like to at least receive from the council, the remaining $333,300 less the $14,000 for crossing guard. Do you want us to just put that into a holding account where you can have discussion about that once we're done with the adoption of the budget and bring back some options, whatever the council has on their wish list and otherwise?
I think that's what I heard from everyone, right? I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to evaluate into totality of the circumstance to see.
Yeah, and we may not know on some of these until the middle of August how the revenues come in at year end.
Well, the $333,000 is audited. We would bring back at mid-year after the audit anything left over from the projection of this fiscal year. And then we'd like the direction that we're comfortable with utilizing the unexpended funds from the green infrastructure project plan that came from the general fund excess prior years to cover the one-time election cost and the excess and the increased COVID cost for this fiscal year of 2021.
Makes sense to me. Everybody okay
Sounds
with
good.
that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm seeing nodding heads all the way around.
Okay. And then after, just to close, after this budget is put to bed and adopted by the council, for the period of time over the next several months, what we will do is follow up on those special funds that we discussed, look at the options for what revenues, options we have to enhance revenues, and have a discussion with the council on those three funds once we have some time to put in the research and find the options available and bring that back to you at a future meeting.
Okay. Any other direction anybody wants to give for our next meeting on this? And do you think you're going to plan on coming back next Tuesday at our regular meeting for an intro? Do we need to do that at a regular meeting, Mala? No? It can be any meeting in June?
We just have the June 30 deadline, right?
Right.
Yeah, we are planning to have a meeting because you have bills to pay and other agenda items for your regular meeting, and we'll see where we are with this at the end of the week. It may or may not work, putting together the narrative. The adjustments we've discussed tonight is the easier part, but there's a lot of text narrative. But between Paul and I, we'll see where we can get. If it's ready to go, we will move it forward. If not, we'll work with the council on maybe a following meeting the following Tuesday. We've got extra Tuesdays in this month, so we can make the introduction and the adoption all before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
I guess one point of clarification that I would like, because you can compare, we got 4 columns in this budget. Would it be most helpful to be comparing revenues and expenses from the 1920 adopted budget to the 2021 proposed budget, or from the projected numbers to the proposed budget? What would you like to see? Because
I think for me, what I was looking at is proposed budget to current year projected.
Okay.
It's like a forecast to forward, but I think that's a preference. Like, okay. Depending on how you like to do it. I don't know if other people like to look at it differently.
I actually like all 4 columns, but what about anybody else?
Well, no, you still have the 4 columns, but he's talking about what are you going to trigger the variance on?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Okay. Any other comments on this item? This was basically a study session, and we've given direction. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is reports. And Matthew, do you want to give the Planning Commission report?
I certainly would. So thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. The Planning Commission did meet. The one item that they had was the CIP general plan conformance. They heard testimony from our city engineer, asked lots of questions, and at the end took action and voted 5-0 to approve and found conformance with the general plan so that we could move forward with the budget. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Matthew, you're looking better. Are you feeling better?
I feel 100% better than a short while ago. Yes, thank you.
Good.
All right. Trails and Landscaping Committee has yet to meet, and hopefully we can get that done before the end of June, but if not, we'll go retroactive on their recommendation. City manager and staff, Laura, you've got a report for us.
Can I ask
Carl,
a question?
did you have something?
Hold on 1 second. CW had a question.
Yeah, just quick on the Trails and Landscape. Did we have someone resign? Do we need to add someone, or is there a vacant position, or what's the situation with that?
Yes, even without the resignation, we have a vacant position. We don't have all the positions filled.
Oh, we didn't have all the positions filled? Oh.
No. There's like 5 or 6 more slots if we wanted.
Applications are still open, and as they come in, Janet will refer them to you. But if you know somebody that wants to put their name in, that's totally fine. At this point in time, we have not been able to convene the Trails and Landscaping Committee. We're still working. I got to check with her, but I think we've gotten in all of our conflict of interest, or not conflict of interest, oath of office statements now, but it's just a matter of time to try to get a TLC meeting together and doing the budget at the same time. That's just a
all right. Thank you.
Do you want the other?
Okay. So, Laura, you want to give the staff report for what else is going on?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things is, as was mentioned by one of our speakers, there was a updated or new memorandum put on our website from the police chief today. You've all received copies of that. I've double checked. It is posted, and it does include some policy information as well. We did have some concerns by residents regarding the weeds in the state park area that adjoin the residential neighborhoods, specifically the Dana Hills, Regency Drive area where the state park abuts those properties. The fire district is, or the state park is working to abate those. They've been working on their fire breaks internal to the park with the bulldozers and stuff, and now they're moving closer out to the perimeter areas over the next couple of weeks, and they hope sometime between 5 days and 2 weeks from now, they will have the Clayton area completed. They've been in touch with CAL FIRE to make sure they're in compliance with CAL FIRE's regulation, because they are a state agency, not under the regulation of Central Contra Costa Consolidated Fire District. And speaking of Central Contra Costa Fire Protection District, they had a June 1 deadline to abate weeds on properties. So if homeowners still haven't had a chance to get out there and cut any tall, dead vegetation down, please do so. Make our community safe. I've checked with our maintenance supervisor, Jim Warburton. He is making the rounds from our contractor to ensure all of the required weed abatement areas that we've taken care of under contract have been satisfactorily completed. He's not yet complete with his full tour, but he's about 80% done. And if there's any areas that need touch up or that they inadvertently missed, they will come back and do that. They're still here and still around. The other item I wanted to convey to you is I got some numbers from the police chief that I'm looking for right now with all my, here it is. I thought you might be interested in is the update on the Regency Drive permit parking area. The chief could not be with us tonight because she had a scheduled conflict. Tickets are down significantly. In April, 77 tickets were issued. In May, 35 tickets were issued. So we've had a 55% reduction. And she attributes, and no complaints have been received on either Monterey Parkway or Regency Drive since the last council meeting. She has not received any contact from any of the Monterey Parkway residents or the individual that had brought up a parking permit program. So we're waiting to hear back from that neighborhood group. Driving out there, there only seems to be a few cars in the Monterey Parkway area. I think right now we're past the waterfall season, the spring grass, the cooler weather, and we're into the hot, dry summer with dry grasses, so it tends to drop off. Plus the parking lot is reopened at Mitchell Canyon as well. So I think the combination of things with COVID exasperated the situation. So we have left up the, as council directed through the SIP process concludes, the no parking all the way down on Regency. Our biggest challenge there is those paper signs keep getting torn off the barricades, and the barricades tossed over. So if they're not properly up, the police have a hard time enforcing. But on a daily basis, maintenance is checking it and replacing signage as needed out there. I will ask Janet if she could give an update on the Planning Commission recruitment.
Thank you, Laura. So City Council members, we did advertise for the Planning Commission. We have 3 seats that are expiring at the end of this month. The deadline was at 5 p.m. today, and we did actually receive 4 applications from interested citizens to serve on the Planning Commission. And we look forward to possibly having an interview with all 4 of those candidates and making a decision at your next City Council meeting of June the 16th.
Thank you, Janet. Anything else, Laura?
Unless I've forgotten something, no.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I did want to share with the council that I did put out a memorandum to the staff. They were back in the offices effective Monday of this week with SIP. We have a very large office with the accommodations with the number of staff here that were very well spread out. We have installed the sneeze guards for the public. We have our hand sanitizers. We have our face masks. We have the cleaning products here. We are planning to bring back appointment only basis on June 15th. I think that's Monday the 15th. And the following Monday, we would open to the public, again, following distance protocols, public wearing their mask, and see how that goes. I think we're going to be outside of Danville. I think we'll be one of the earlier city halls to open up to the public. Some of the other cities are having more complexities because of the large number of staffs they have in smaller office spaces, having to redistribute the staff throughout workspaces to create appropriate work conditions or staggered scheduling them. So we're ready to pretty much rock and roll. We're just phasing in to get back caught up and making some adjustments here in the office as appropriate. We're keeping track of all of our costs for COVID and the project account we set up in case there is reimbursable monies that come about. We've got our application in that all cities put in so that if there are grant funds that become available, reimbursement funds, that we can submit to those. That concludes my report.
Okay, wonderful. We'll go to City Council reports, and I'm going to start with CW.
Okay, since the last time we met, aside from the general emails up to a certain date, went to the Pride flag raising to help with the production of the music for that day. And then was the next thing was the rally downtown, the Black Lives Matter rally. Went down there on the 5th, and it was peaceful. I know there's some misinformation going around that the city somehow sponsored the food and the water for that, but that was actually done by our local businesses, and so we thank them for that. That was a really good idea, and not sponsored by the city, but by our city businesses. So that was great. And then, of course, came the firestorm of every email that I still haven't got to, and phone calls and everything else with regard to some of the actions that happened on the first protest on the 2nd. So I'm still trying to get through all of that. And that's my report.
Very good. Jeff?
Yeah, so let's see. I don't know where to start here. A lot of email, a lot of phone call with folks around town just interested in what's going on. This is probably one of the more active periods that we've had, so I'm grateful for all the folks that have reached out. There was this, so I'm just, this is a very busy week, but I'm glad to hear from everyone who took the time. I've been trying to respond as well as I can. Apparently, I've beaten Mr. Wolf here because I have gotten to all of them.
What did you?
So, anyways, yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Very good. Tuya?
So I don't have any official committee reports either, but obviously, like everybody else, I've talked to a lot of residents this past week, specifically about the Tuesday and Friday protests and events. And I think while most everybody was very moved and inspired by Friday's event, I don't think that the same can be said about Tuesday. So I recognize that we did not fully know what to expect for Tuesday. I think we also placed our police officers in a very tough spot for Tuesday. I think in retrospect, all of us, all 5 council members, and we could have been more involved going into Tuesday. And I think collectively, I think we messed up a little bit on Tuesday. It's easy to say after the fact what we could have done differently, but I think we can learn from our mistakes. And fortunately, in this case, we did have another opportunity to have another Black Lives Matter event and to do that better on Friday. So I'm very appreciative of everyone who was involved in making Friday an event that was actually inspiring. I think the experiences that some of our residents have had in Clayton, were definitely heartbreaking to hear. But I think it was absolutely something that all of us needed to hear. I do want to emphasize too that, I think neither Tuesday or Friday's events were targeted at Clayton PD. We have great police officers, and we appreciate all of their work in ensuring everybody's safety. And just as a background, I was born in a country where citizens for decades, per surveys, enjoy approximately 95% trust in police officers. So that's my background into that. But I do recognize that there's a larger discussion and larger dialogue that needs to happen in our country and also in Clayton, and I would definitely like to see that dialogue continue. Friday was great, but we should definitely take the opportunity to address some of the things also in our community. I think we need to continue listening. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the dialogue, and I appreciate Holly mentioning in the beginning of the meeting that there are some things happening, so I look forward to that. Second, I'm going to bring this up at the end of the meeting as well in the future council items, but I would like to take this opportunity for us to understand what our police policies are regarding use of force and some of those other things. So I really appreciate Chief Warren providing a message to the community today that addressed some of that, but I would like to schedule an actual agenda item to discuss that. And I want to be very clear that that's not intended to point any fingers, to provide any criticism, but really for us to have an opportunity to understand, to ask questions, and also to provide an opportunity for our community members for a dialogue. So I'll bring that up a little bit later today as well. But like I said, inspired by Friday, but I think we had a lot to learn from Tuesday.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I actually have had quite a few meetings this last couple of weeks.
Did you forget me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. Yes.
No, why don't you? I bow to the mayor.
No. You go right ahead. You weren't fidgeting as much, so I lost you in the screen.
I've been listening attentively.
Good for you. So now you can speak.
Okay. Just participated in a number of conference calls with both the federal level and the state, and had a very interesting one that I participated in with Senator Glazer, and his primary focus was on the local restaurants that are in his district. And it was very, very surprising on the impact that this whole issue has taken upon them, the loss of business. One company that has 3 restaurants in a number of cities within his district, they had an 85% drop in their business. But that's quite a bit, even with the fact that they've had some turnaround with the takeout. And now it appears that our beloved county is beginning to relax some of that and beginning to allow our restaurants to again do outside planning of meals and that, which sounds very promising. And I know there's a couple of people that are very interested in that, particularly as it relates to our downtown and the Chop House, the the Scipolinis and so forth. So I'm looking forward, and I know I brought that up at a previous city councilman based upon a recommendation from one of our constituents, and look forward to pursuing that. One thing I don't believe got mentioned at any of, I'm trying to reflect now on our recent city council meetings, but Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 1525 did in fact have a very nice and reserved and reduced Memorial Day ceremony that both the mayor and I attended, along with a small group of citizens, which I thought at first was not going to happen, but then the post commander, who was having some physical issues, was able to put together a nice event to honor those people that allow us to do and exercise our First Amendment rights and privileges. I did have a couple of phone calls that I received, not only from constituents here, but from other people expressing their thoughts relative to both last Tuesday and last Friday's event, which rally that I attended. And so I've been following up on those. To that point, I've talked both on the phone and in person with our chief, and I too am going to be bringing up a recommended move forward at a future council meeting after talking with the chief. And it sounds like she's very interested in engaging with our community and moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, I'm going to start at the top of my list or I'll forget something. Had a couple of Association of Bay Area Government and Metropolitan Transportation Committee joint meetings on governance and where we go as two agencies trying to work together as one. We had a lovely brief ceremony on June 1st at the flagpole in front of City Hall to raise the pride flag. We had, maybe a dozen folks who came and attended that ceremony. It was very well physically distanced and all of that, but we did get the pride flag up on 3 of our flagpoles in town. Attended a Contra Costa Transportation Authority Administrative and Projects Committee. That's where we deal with the budget. And it looks like the budget for local streets and roads is probably going to drop in this next year by somewhere around 17%. That's how much the sales tax is going down. So we're very glad that we have 2 years banked, that we can go ahead with our pavement program that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But that's in the bank, but future years are going to be a little slower for a bit anyway. Depends on how fast the economy recovers. Attended the mayor's conference. It was a fairly brief meeting, but it was nice to see everybody from around the county and how they're all doing. I too attended the Friday Black Lives Matter march. I saw a lot of the video from Tuesday, was very concerned about that and worked closely with the chief in particular on changing the logistics of that. Worked with Tuya and CW on how we could turn that around a little bit. Proud to say that all council members were there on Friday. I know some were there on Tuesday as well. But changing that, the logistics of that really did make a difference in how it went forward. And I really want to thank those who worked on that, the Clayton businessmen who paid for the food and the water that was distributed, the businesses that quickly on a few hours notice put together over 100 and something sandwiches and other goodies for people to nibble on. And I still want to know where those cookies came from because I want more. And really, I want to thank our Clayton police officers. The Friday event was really lovely, and there were a lot of the residents who were there who commented on how nice it was to see our officers spaced throughout the park, They're friendly faces, just like they see out on the street all the time. They really appreciated that. So, you know, we learn as we go forward. And so I want to thank the chief and all of the officers for the work that they put in to make the Friday event work better. I think we learned a lot on Tuesday, and there are explanations for a lot of it, but I'm not going to get into that here. That really is for a discussion where the chief can be there to help us all understand how things happened. I was supposed to have been in Detroit the last 5 days for a conference, but that didn't happen. So I spent Monday and Tuesday all day long in Zoom meetings doing the conference virtually. And, you know, Zoom gets old after a while, but I do think it's better. We actually had better attendance at the conference than we normally do. And it certainly cost us all a lot less because they had no registration fee for it. And none of us had to pay for hotel rooms or plane fares. So, you know, there are pluses and minuses. And then we had a virtual cocktail hour instead of the dinner together. So that worked out all right too. I do want to thank Mark Steinberg and the VFW for the beautiful, although brief and very early flag ceremony that they did on Memorial Day. That was really well done. And as Jim said, there were, I don't know, maybe 50 people there instead of the normal 500 to 1,000 that show up. And it was held at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was a good thing because it was 102 in the afternoon, and it was probably close to 100 by 10:30. But it was very nice for them to get that done. So thank everybody for what they did there. And I will tell you that I've been working with Holly and a couple of other people on how can we go forward from here. And we're going to be meeting in a couple of small groups to just get some input from some of the leaders in our Black community to figure out how we want to start meeting as more of a town hall kind of thing, or how we want to structure that, and work with the chief and others to try to put some of that together in a place where people can feel really comfortable being very open about their concerns. So we're going to start working on that in the next week or so, and we'll bring some reports back to you and have you give us feedback as well, and we'll include everybody in that as we get a little bit further down the road. But we want to do some brainstorming first and get some resources that everyone can refer to. So I will bring that back to you at the next meeting and let you know what we're thinking about, and you can give us your feedback. So that is all of my report. We have no public hearings this evening. We do have a few action items. As I mentioned before, we're going to take 8C and D in reverse order, but we'll start with 8A, which is our 10-year pavement preservation plan for city streets. And Scott, you're up again.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. So all of you are, we all are very aware that we are required to use a pavement management program in town. Every city, every agency in the 9 Bay Area counties is required to do that. We use the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's paper program. And really in the past, we've made decisions year at a time. So what I wanted to do, and have been wanting to do, and I'm finally trying to get it accomplished, is to bring forward a longer term program that covers many years. This one, and the reason I chose 10 years on this is because I wanted to start by showing you the trends of what will happen over 10 years, and that'll help make longer term decisions. So the report that I provided talks about different, the different funding sources and what the PCI means, and it goes into quite a bit of detail, and it's not necessarily terribly important for the presentation here, because what I'd like to be able to show you is one graph that's included in the report, but to me it tells the most of the story. So I'm presuming, Laura and Mayor Pierce, that I can share screen if is that?
I think so.
Do something, or can I just do it?
I think you can just do it.
Okay. So this is a projection.
Looks good.
Over 10 years, thank you, that folks that I work with that really make this thing run, I drive them crazy with this thing, because once you get beyond about 3-4 years in this, it becomes, the term fantasy is not correct, but it's projection, and so it's a good planning tool, and that's it. So the first three.
Can you make it smaller? Like all the things on the bottom are cut off. So there's no.
Let me try.
Like all the labels are cut off. So I don't know if you want to make it smaller or whatnot.
Let me try. See if I can.
There you go.
That one.
Found a
let me
page or something. Go to 85%. Or 75. See what that's
there you go. There you go.
Okay, this will give it. Now I can't read it though. My eyes are too old.
We can.
So anyway, what I have my folks do when they put this together for us is they run a 10-year scenario of roughly what we project our revenues will be that we can use for payment management, payment preservation. Paul and I looked at this and we came up with a number of $600,000. So why I had them run a $600,000 work plan over 10 years, and the 10 years alternated. 1 year local streets, the following year arterial collectors, the following year after that local streets. So it went back and forth. So you have 5 years of each, 5 years of local streets, 5 years of arterials and collectors. It came up with a work plan, a list of streets for each of those 5 years. And then what I asked them to do is to look at what happens when we do this program. What's the end result going to be? And so you come up with what the program calls unrestrained spending. Not really an accurate description. If you had all the money in the world and you spent all that money in the world every year on your streets, everything would be 100 and it would never change. That's not how this program works. It looks at the optimal amount that you can use in a year, and actually, it doesn't just say, okay, you've got all the money in the world. So you're not going to get to 100, and it's not going to stay at 100, but it'll go to the highest PCI that it can get to with.
Is there a legend? Like there's each year has 4 bars. What does the red bar indicate? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
See, it's hard to interpret it without the legend.
All right. It's hard on my screen to know where I've got things.
You got it good there now.
So can you see all of it now?
Looks good.
Okay, so the green is the unconstrained spending. The yellow line is what will it cost to maintain a network-wide average PCI of 80, which is where we are today. The green line is the unconstrained. I'm sorry. The blue line is what will happen if we continually spend $600,000 a year, and the red line is if we don't do anything, what happens? So obviously, in 10 years, if we do nothing, our PCI drops dramatically from an 80 down to a 62. And the bar graph below, that shows the dollar value of backlog that needs to be dealt with of payment maintenance. So ultimately, it grows to $11 million of unfunded work. that you would have to end up playing catch up with, and quite honestly, we would never catch up. If, as I said, if we were to maintain a value of 80, would cost us $900,000 a year, and our backlog would diminish and would stay, quite low. It would disappear in the middle years between 2026 and 2029, and then would come back again in the two years 2930 and 3031. Then the blue line, which is what we spend today and what we would presumably continue to spend, will ultimately drop from an 80 down to 74, and our backlog will hover around $5 million starting in 2026. So that's where we are and where we will be going, so to speak. There's 20 pages or 19 pages of streets that are selected over this 10-year period and lays each one of them out. Those are, they're a good plan. They are a plan. They're not going to be cast in stone. So, there will be adjustments that will be made, that sort of thing. But I wanted to bring this to you and show it to you and give you the opportunity to adopt this as a plan over, a long period of time that we can use as a guidepost on a year-to-year basis of, where we're going to go with our pavement preservation. One of the other things that comes out of this is, and I'll try to reduce this down as well. This is just a pictorial of the streets that would be done over the 20-year period by different color for different year, so that you can see, how many streets we would be treating over this 10-year period, and would give anyone an opportunity to kind of see, okay, where does my street fall within the next decade? Will it be treated? Won't it be treated? And if so, what year? Again, like I said, this is not a resolution where you're adopting this and approving these streets. That's the subject of the next report. But I would like to bring this to you, put it in front of you, and if you are willing to, ask you to adopt it over this 10-year period, so that we've got this plan to move forward with. It is not just 1 year at a time, but it's projecting forward. And then if we want to make changes or opportunities for additional funding come in, we can use the 10-year graph to project what that will do to benefit our street network overall. So really, that's the end of the presentation that I had on this, but I'd like to open it up to questions if you have any, and I'll try to answer them for you.
Hey, questions. And Scott, if you can drop your screen off of there so we can see each other, that helps. Thank you. Questions? Jeff?
What's the methodology for establishing the streets by year? When I look at each year, the PCI ratings of the areas kind of it doesn't seem to follow like an ascending pattern year over year. Like I would expect to see 2021 to see the lowest in general, obviously with allowances for proximity. And then going each year thereafter to kind of see a trending upwards of PCI. That way, that's because we push them out because they would be in better shape right now. That's not what it seems like.
No,
am I looking at that right?
That's a common belief that worst first is the way that the program works, and it's really not. When you put this work plan together, the parameters that you give the program are the total number of dollars available, the total number of years, so dollars per year in essence. So, but you also tell it what you want as far as a percentage between maintenance and rehabilitation, so that it spreads the money amongst the two different approaches or the two different types of work that's done on the streets. The maintenance of the streets is by far less expensive. So you get many more lane miles of street treated as on maintenance as you do on a rehabilitation. So it becomes a bit of a balancing act between those two. So the recommendation that the program says is use 70% rehabilitation, 30% maintenance, and that's typically what you do. So the program will look at the streets, the current condition of them, and then through the algorithm. And I don't know, I'm not privy to or smart enough probably to really understand how they put that algorithm together. And frankly, I'm not interested in it because it either works or it doesn't. And how they did it is up to them, mathematicians. But it will select the streets to give you the best return on investment, which typically is maintenance. So you'll maintain as much as you can to keep those PCIs high, and then use the other 70% to go in and fix the streets in a rehabilitation method that will give you also the best return on investment. And that's not necessarily going to be grind and overlay. There are other rehabilitation methods that you put onto streets that are in better condition, and it will raise the PCI and put them back into a maintenance mode. So it's not always it's not going to be worst first. That's not how the program works, and that's not honestly the most economical approach. Fixing the worst first does not help you because you spend all your money on your worst streets, and by the time you get those taken care of, the good streets that you had are now your worst streets, and they cost you more as well. It's more cost effective to maintain the streets in a better condition. The streets that are bad really don't get a whole lot worse. So yes, the PCIs on them drop, but you're saving or you're getting better return because you're spending the money to maintain the streets that are in good condition, and then you rebuild the ones that need to be rehabilitated as you can. So it's not, I don't think you're going to see the trend that you're looking or you were expecting, Jeff.
That's one heck of a hard sell. That's a hard sell to the constituents, and I mean, it's hard to understand you're not doing worst first. How do you explain this to the citizens, especially? I mean,
the way I look at it, the way I
go ahead.
Talk about it to people is I say, okay, it's a street, cars run on the street. Think of it in terms of a vehicle. If you have a group of vehicles that are in various different conditions, do you go to the worst car and spend the most money on it? Or
do if it's my car.
You go to the best car and maintain it so that you, over the life of it, you spend the least amount on it. And that's the difference, you look at the street. And you're
I think that is probably good economically, but another way of thinking of that from the resident who lives on that worst street is that you're the sacrificial lamb. I mean, you're basically, well, you're beyond saving, so we're going to triage and you're done. I'm not disagreeing with the method. I think, I think I'm sure that this is the way that it's done. It's not, you're not like reinventing the wheel here. So I'm not really questioning that. I'm just trying to think of a way that I would craft. How would you craft an explanation in the elevator pitch to say, you are not the sacrificial lamb? And so that's what I'm thinking about, and I'm not really sure what that is right now, because you see some of these, 2023, 2025, those those streets definitely in those years are much worse than the ones in 2021, 2022. So that's I got to think about that. I don't know if there's like a highlight of the algorithm that really makes sense, because I think you kind of touched on it in that it's opportunity cost and maximizing value. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But yeah. So
You're exactly right. It's maximizing value. That's what the program is set up to do, is to maximize value, looking at the entire network. And yes, it is difficult because there are always going to be streets that it's an average. So there's going to be highs and there's going to be lows. And it's personal to everyone because, as you said, they live on that street. That's their street. And so it is personal. And therein there is a rub that comes from that. But then again, that's also why this program was put together, was to try to take that out of the equation, to take the you picked him over me kind of scenario. I mean, that does happen because we have limited funds and they can only go so far. So I mean, it's a pickle. It is a pickle. But
yeah, totally.
Spend it, what we've got, spend it with the best rate of return for the the total group.
And I had asked you specifically about one that seemed like a standout because it was 2029 and it had the lowest rating among all. And you took a look at it, I think. I'm not sure what came of that, but that's probably more in line with the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, that was Pinot Court. Pinot Court. We just slurry sealed Pinot Court in the 2018 program. I walked Pinot Court this morning or this afternoon. This morning. And if you look at Pinot Court now and you walk up there as a pavement rater and rated it, it would not be a 56. You look at it and it's just not. It's in much better shape than that rating number. Now, I can't argue with the rating number because then I'd start customizing the program and it would, it would throw the whole thing off. The other thing about Pinot Court is it's a smaller street. It's 5 houses, so the traffic load is light. You don't have a lot of through traffic. You really don't have any through traffic. You've got 5 residents who use that. And so the wear and tear is not going to be as dramatic. But the program, it doesn't have the capacity to see all of those details. So those kind of details get, ignored by the algorithm because it's a local street and it's treated as any other local street is. So it is scheduled to be overlaid in 2025, and that would bring it back to a PCI of 100. And then, you would start the aging process over from that. So, and then I also looked at the defect, and it has gotten worse. So we will address it as a spot repair in this year's program. So took care of that. There's a couple of those that throughout town that we have, and we hold on to them and not hold on to them, but we address them as a part of the overall larger project where we can do it, with economies of scale and address those smaller repairs while we're doing the larger project because we get a better price from the contractor to do it.
Great. Yeah, and I think earlier in the year, didn't we approve a retainer for various spot repairs as necessary?
Yep, and we did them.
And so I guess, as long as we're willing to engage in those things when they become necessary on a one-off basis, then this creating a plan, I think, is always good. I like plans. So.
It gives you a general, direction.
Jim?
And if I can add to that.
Hang on, let Jim ask his question because he's confident.
Well, Jim can't get in.
I know. I'm trying to get you there, Jim. So
Well, as you all know, I'm very simplistic and a simple guy. Now, let me ask a very simple question, and I appreciate all you algorithmic people and you math majors and all that, although I do have a minor in economics, but let me ask this. Do we have any historical information on when we did these streets so you can layer that in there and at least have that as in your hip pocket to be able to answer these questions that seem to not comply with the algorithms?
Yes, there is. There's a number of different reports that this program will spit out to you, and one of them is you get a report by street section that will give you the complete history of every maintenance work that's been done and recorded on that street section throughout the years. It only is as good as the beginning date of using Street Saver, but it is very useful because you can open the book up to whatever street you want, and it will say, you first recorded on this date, and on this subsequent date, there was a maintenance that was done. There was a subsequent date, this was done, that was done, and it just marches through chronologically and talks about or discusses and says every maintenance or rehabilitation work item that was accomplished on that street section.
Yeah, well, I do recall when Eagle Peak Place was done. I can't be specific on the year, but I do recall when it's done. And I know that you now have a program that I think to 2027. And I suspect if I polled my neighbors, they would be satisfied with that because our street being a cul-de-sac and very has low traffic seems to have survived very nicely over the period of time that we had it done, whenever it was. Thank you.
Laura? You're muted, Laura. Did you want to add something?
She's frozen.
I think she just froze.
She's standing very still, very still.
No, I just wanted to follow up from Scott Allman's comments is, yes, we have traditionally, when we do street projects, we often have some one-off little areas that have some patchwork to do. And I wanted to also let you know that I've asked Scott to kind of look at that as we look forward to this project, but also include, the council had raised the Mitchell Canyon Road near Pine Hollow Road area that's been depressed and has some alligatoring going on around the elementary school. So that would be one that would also be a candidate for this kind of, minor repair, so to speak.
Okay. Any other comments to you, W?
I guess, I'm sorry, did I jump on that? No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm still concerned because, I live on Peacock Creek, and Peacock Creek, I hear all the time about how we're falling into the ocean. And
you'll like it that Peacock Creek is included in this year's plan.
Is it in this year's plan?
It's in the agenda packet, yeah.
As an overlay, not to fix the sliding.
Like moving the earth? No, yeah, I don't think it's moving the earth.
That's what they're saying is the road is sliding down the hill. So I know it's scheduled for an overlay.
That's outside your budget, Scott. You got to do some earth moving.
I just wonder how we can explain it to people so they understand what we're doing and why, and that it is a spot fix as opposed to a major reconstruction.
Well, Peacock Creek will get treated this year in the program.
It
is scheduled to be treated.
But when you say treated, what does that actually mean?
I believe it's a rubber cape seal, if I'm not mistaken. I think actually all the streets in this program are rubber cape seal. So it's oil emulsion with rubber melted into it, and then chip seal on top of that, and then over the top of that is a seal to create the driving surface.
We'll see if that satisfies the appetite here.
Well, and I would just say I hope the quality control was better than the last time we had that done.
Well, that's been a comment too, yeah.
Yeah.
Not to you, to yeah.
Yeah, my only comment really was I really appreciate this data. I love having sort of a 10-year look, love having I think this is super helpful. So thank you for putting this together.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, other questions? I don't see any hands raised, but I will ask the audience, which is shrinking by the hour. If any of our 6 attendees have public comments on this item.
I actually think Matthew has been shrinking by the hour.
This is a safe space, Carl. Come on.
Assure them that their street is going to get done first, but that's not going to be the case. So.
By the way, the only thing that is slipping into the ocean is the 16th fairway at Oakhurst.
Oh.
Wouldn't know. Anyway, I see no hands raised for public comment, so we will bring it back to us. This is an action item to adopt the 10-year pavement preservation program, and with the understanding that year to year there will probably be some adjustments. Is that correct, Scott?
That's correct. Each year we typically bring to you the list of streets to be included in that year's program, that year's project, and those are officially approved at City Council. So by adopting this 10-year program, it gives you the 10-year look ahead and the proposed list of streets, but they're not officially approved by you until the year that we actually physically do the work on them, so that there is opportunity for flexibility if need be. There may be funding issues that happen on a year-to-year basis, and we may end up with less revenue than we think, and we would have to potentially shrink the pool of work that we can do. So I don't want to lock us into a cast-in-stone program, but I want it to be able to have a guideposts for all of us to go by. That we can use. It's just like budgeting. This is our proposed budget. We'll see what really happens when we get there, and it's the same with this.
So this would serve as a starting point at each of the years. Then is that kind of how we're approaching it?
Yes. Yeah. That's
and
what
then
I'll give you.
And then if we have a catastrophe on one street and it needs to bump up 2 years because there was a underground pipe that burst or something and ruined the pavement, then it gets moved.
Would you? One more question. Are you expecting then to update the 10-year look on a rolling basis, so that each year, if on the years where we approve any given streets project, are you going to go back and then recast the go forward plan every year? Is that, because that's usually how you do forecast, right? So I'm not sure what your intention was.
The intent would be to give this 10-year initial look and then treat it like a capital improvement program, to where it's a 10-year roll. So we'll add a year next year, and we'll have the year that we've completed the work will fall off, and that will then become fact in the maintenance that will be put back into the database to say these streets were treated, these were the treatments, and it will change the database and update that PCI, and then we'll add a year. So in this 10-year program, it ends in
2029.
Was it 29? No, it ends 2030.
Oh, 2030.
Here we'd add 2031, and we'll just keep this 10-year roll going.
But are you planning then to hold the out years static, or are you thinking that those would be refreshed each year to reflect reality?
I think the both answers are yes. The reality,
those are mutually exclusive.
when the reality will be that when you update the maintenance on the work that was accomplished, and you run the program another time and say, okay, this is the work plan. I want the same work plan. I got the same number of years. I've got the same dollars per year. It will select the same streets for that next year. It's not going to pick a whole new scenario, it'll select those next streets because economically, those are still the next best streets to treat. And so you'll add a year at the end of it, but you're not going to get a wholesale recast of years 2 through 10.
But you might every 2 years when you run the street saver analysis, right?
No, even still then, it shouldn't. No, I mean that.
Well, anytime that you deviate from the projection, you will get something different if you rerun the algorithm, right?
If you
so
deviate,
only
yes.
if you, yeah. But if only if you follow exactly the projection. And when you're talking a 10-year look ahead, I would expect there to be deviations, whether it may be significant or insignificant. But there will. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say there's going to be deviations just even in the degradation pattern that we see. So, you know, that's why I'm thinking like if we're intending to do a recast or we're just going to lock it in and not plan to make any changes. Because if you're going to update for current information, it will necessarily change even at least to the extent that it will change the number. It may not change the overall street, but the number will change. And so I don't know what the intent is of the thing. I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's great. I just want to know like what you would expect to see in the future.
Well, I would just add there, this is where we wish that the second Measure J had passed.
Yep.
Because that would have given us the extra $300,000 a year and could have made up that gap right there in the return to source. So hopefully at some point that'll happen again, but it's probably not going to happen in the immediate future. But it certainly would have made a big difference on this projection. So anyway.
Councilmember Juan, just in answer to your question, if we make changes and exercise flexibility, then yeah, there will be changes and they'll be reflected. But if we don't have dramatic changes, or we don't make dramatic revisions to the plan, we won't see dramatic change in the outcome, so to speak. So you know, it's you're not going to get a whole new list of streets the next year than you would have seen here. There may be some minor changes to it, but it stays fairly consistent.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of the council? The action here is to adopt the plan.
It's a crystal ball shot, right? We're rolling the dice on this.
I mean, theoretically, even if we don't formally adopt the plan, we could still use the exact same plan, right?
True.
I mean,
that's true.
I would move approval, knowing that it is a plan with the best knowledge that we have at the time.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Janet, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Pierce. Councilmember Catalano? Aye. Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Yeah,
aye. Aye. I vote aye.
And Mayor Pierce?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we're all wanting a little bit of flexibility if something unforeseen happens, but we make those allocation decisions on a year-by-year basis. So
that's correct. Yeah.
If we disagree with what comes forward because it was written up 5 years ago and it doesn't fit this year, then we'll do that.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you all. Okay. Next thing is to actually adopt this year's plan. Scott, you want to kick this off?
Yes, thank you. There's a couple of actions that we're asking for tonight, one of which is to adopt and approve the streets for this year's program, for this year's project. And then also I'm asking you to reallocate SB1 funds that are from previous years that have been assigned and allocated to the Pine Hollow Road project and have been stashed there in a savings plan with the current status of Pine Hollow Road and the fact that we're trying to get a grant for doing a complete street study, that the actual construction has been pushed off at least a couple of years. The money that we have sitting there from the SB1, the RMRA money, we really need to put it to work. So I'm asking that you would be able to pull it out of the Pine Hollow Road project, reallocate it to this year's pavement preservation project, work on the streets where it belongs, and then when we have a firmer schedule for the Pine Hollow Road, we can then, if we need to or want to, council can direct to have future years RMRA money directed towards Pine Hollow Road to backfill what we use now. Or if we have other opportunities for other funding sources, which I'm cautiously optimistic about. I believe that the way that we're approaching the improvements on Pine Hollow Road, where we're doing it in conjunction with Concord, who's our neighbor, we're looking at complete streets. We have 3 schools that are served by that road. Part of the improvements that we're looking at are gap closure improvements. I think that would make that street and that overall project a competitive candidate for active transportation funds and safe routes to school funds, which I think could supplement the RMRA funds that I'm asking you to allocate this year away. So we may not need to backfill in the future, but again, I don't have that crystal ball. I don't know that we will compete and how well we would compete. I do believe we would be competitive, but we have time also to make those decisions and be able to put that plan into attack without having this RMRA money that's just sitting there not being used. So what I would like to ask is the approval of the list of the streets, and the streets for this year's program are North Mitchell Canyon Road, Caulfield Court, Kenston Drive, Tiffin Drive, Chardonnay Circle, Peacock Creek Drive, Pebble Beach Drive, Mount Dell Drive, Harriman Court, Fleming Drive, El Molino, and Capistrano Court. And the intent for this year's program is to use the rubber Cape Seal. We're also, by doing that and by applying to Cal Recycle in a co-application with the City of Concord, are able to bring upwards of $83,000 or $86,000 to the project to fund the rubber emulsion portion of the construction.
Which also makes the surface last longer.
Correct.
And so just to clarify, Scott, the $189, almost $190,000 that we're reallocating off of Pine Hollow is about 20% of the entire project, that the money that we've accumulated for that ultimate project, correct?
The ultimate project being the ultimate Pine Hollow Road project, or the ultimate?
Right. The current CIP project, the 190,000 is roughly 20% of the total.
For Pine Hollow Road?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so it's not like we're reallocating the entire pot for that project.
No. So the other funds that don't have the same urgency to get on the street as the SB1 funds do.
Right. Those are a little more of a use it or lose it kind of a deal. Okay. All right, questions for Scott on the program and what's being proposed? I don't see any hands up from our attendees, members of the public either, but I will ask again if they want to raise their hand and make any comments. Going once, going twice. Okay, it's up to us, folks. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So
motion 2.
We have a resolution.
I had a question. So this is your street, right? Don't you live here? on one of these, I think.
Tiffin, yeah, and Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
Got Creeker in
Yeah. That's where Carl is. All right, cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't get out that way too much because that's like a dead end. So.
Come on out, you can go skiing.
Nope.
So my only comment would be, so I think it might have been last year or the year before when we did some of the slurry seals in some of the streets. I know we had some very anxious residents who immediately drove their car through the wet, seal and ruined some of it. So I just want to emphasize, and I'm sure it's in your notes somewhere high up, that we make sure that the contractor prevents our residents from destroying it as soon as it's laid. So just extra security measures.
We'll absolutely do our best to do that, and the intent this time around is just to shut the streets off and not, we were trying to allow partial access, and it did not work.
No.
It will be a stricter program of traffic control to prevent that, but I mean, these are adults driving vehicles that, unless you want to step in front of them, sometimes you just can't stop them. And things will happen. But yeah, we will take every precaution and every action to minimize that, because it was a problem for all of us, and it was not a good deal.
So we get a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay.
So do you get to vote? Do you get to vote on the ones? Isn't there like a 500-foot rule?
I have to recuse myself.
The city.
So
I don't know.
To approve the resolution as it stands for 2020, 2020
right.
For the streets. Do I have to give the number?
No.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Janet, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilmember Catalano?
Aye.
Councilmember Diaz?
Yes.
I don't hear you.
I think she called you. I think she called you.
She called me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I called you. Thank you. Vice Mayor Juan?
Aye.
And Mayor Pierce?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Now we got those done. Now we're going to go, because we said earlier we're going to reverse 8C and 8D. We're going to go to 8D next and talk about our schedule for the summer before Matthew gets into the fire code changes, because we need to know what dates are available so we can set those hearings. So let's go to 8D and look at our summer schedule and see if anybody has vacation plans for sometime you're not going to be here or want to take off. Don't we all wish we had a
I don't know where to go. Yeah.
I'm open all 3 months. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have nothing. I have nothing on my schedule unless all of a sudden everything opens up and air travel and everything else happens. I'm going nowhere.
And as long
more than that, we've shown that we don't need to be present. I mean, we can have these meetings, so that's fine. As well as, I think that there's a lot of things going on in town, especially given, the recent events, as well as like some of the things that we want to happen, the budget we're going to have to meet on. I kind of feel like preemptively canceling is probably not, I don't know. I would skip them.
Yeah, I kind of think that too. I know that in past years we've had to have at least one meeting in August to make adjustments on the budget for things that have come in after July 1st. We also sometimes need to do that in September. This year might be, who knows what the state's going to do to us when they do their real budget in August. They could plan an end run again around us like they did, 20 years ago, and we'll all be up in Sacramento whether they want us or not. So my gut tells me let's just play it by ear, and if something happens and we don't need to have a meeting, we don't have a meeting, but stay fluid on it. Does that feel good to everybody else?
I fully agree. I think we should keep the schedule full and, like you said, cancel if we need. Have nothing going on.
Does that work, Laura?
Yes, that's fine. I mean, we brought this because sometimes in the past you guys have had plans and schedules. We knew COVID-19 shut down stuff, but we know family campgrounds and other things are open. So we want to make sure you had an opportunity to check your calendars and give us direction. So
I think
at
we
this
all
point,
wish
there's
we had
no
vacation.
conflict with the council's calendars for vacations or otherwise for our planned council meetings.
What is the thought process or going forward now on getting back to actual physical meetings? Is anybody made any overtures that way, Laura, at all?
No, none of the cities. Some of the cities are wanting to get back, but the restrictions in the meeting rooms, and they're concerned about having the public come to a meeting and then not being able to accommodate them. So we're going to see what happens, I think, over the next 30 days with the county health department and see where things go on enclosed spaces and public meetings, or, like the churches are going to be limited on how much they can have on occupancy.
Maybe we could have those drive-through council meetings.
I don't think that works.
I think we get better attendance this way.
I do too. I really do too.
And I think this is maybe a preferred format.
Yeah,
I disagree.
It's. I don't think it's bad.
No, it's not. I don't think it's bad either. But I'm ready to get back to a regular in-present meeting.
It's interesting. Our executive director at MTC, in her report last month, said that our public attendance at MTC and ABAG meetings has doubled since we started having online Zoom meetings. And not only that, but our attendance by the actual commissioners is close to 100%, when, we might have 75 or 80% there. So, and
you got to drive into Oakland.
No, we're in San Francisco, which is
even worse.
Even worse.
Even worse.
Exactly. And the expense and all of that. I mean, it's a big deal. So I'm hoping that Sacramento will consider, instead of just saying we're all going 100% back to in-person meetings, to make some provision for a hybrid. But anyway, that's off the agenda, and I'm seeing Molly get nervous. So
no, but I would echo that too.
From the meeting date.
Yeah, right. Tuya?
No, I was going to just say that I've also seen professionally, I think the members of the public who are able to comment on online meetings is vastly varied from, those who can attend and spend 3 hours sitting in a hearing room.
That's
so
right.
I think we are getting better comment overall.
I think we are too.
More comment.
Okay, so if that comes up as a legislative item sometime in the future, we know what our answer is likely to be. All right, let's go back to item 8C, which is introduction and first reading of an ordinance adopting the 2019 California Fire Code with some amendments. And this is up to Matthew.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I'll make this very brief. This is the 2019 Fire Code with the amendments that we're introducing tonight. We're asking the council to introduce and set a public hearing date no earlier than July 7th. And there's only, staff could find one item that was of significance, which was the weed abatement portion of the fire code, which gives more authority to the fire district to do weed abatement and enforce that. Other than that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
You've been sitting here for like 4 hours for that. Poor guy.
If I may, Mayor and Council, since you did not cancel any meetings in July, staff would recommend, and I know Matt is ready to proceed for the July 7th meeting for the hearing date.
Okay. Wonderful. So, so tonight is the introduction, and then the hearing is, and the adoption will be in July, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Are we doing anything? Are we doing anything weird? Like, Well, I mean,
Well, I
like, if
have
we're
a
going to
question.
introduce, are we deviating from the fire code in any way, or are we just adopting what they're promulgating?
We have to be consistent, and the bigger change here is that the fire district is now a little more in charge of weed abatement enforcement and not the city. So it used to be that we had to do some of it, and once in a while we could get the fire department to issue the notices if it was, we weren't getting a response. Now it's really their response, and we can pester them about specific cases if we need to.
All right, good.
And can I ask the city attorney on, this is an introduction of an ordinance. Does the city clerk need to read the ordinance title for the introduction?
She could do it now, or she could do it at the second reading.
Okay, so we don't need to do it tonight. Thank you.
We could do it in either one. And we do have, it looks like one public comment, Mayor, when you're ready.
It does look like it. Yes, it does. Okay, let's go to public comment, and that's Holly Tillman, and we need to unmute Holly.
That was a mistake. Sorry, I accidentally hit it when I was trying to do my phone. Sorry.
All right, all right. So you didn't want to comment on this one, huh, Holly? Okay.
On the fire code.
All right. So we'll bring it back to the council for a motion to introduce and have the first reading of the ordinance.
I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Jeff, a second by Tuya. Janet, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Catalano.
Aye.
Councilmember Diaz.
Yes.
Councilmember Wolf.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Juan.
Aye.
And Mayor Pierce.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes unanimously. We have one item. Thank you, Matthew.
Okay. We need to set the public hearing date.
Oh, yes. The staff report said July 7th. I think that was part of the motion, correct?
It said no earlier than July 7th.
Was it not July 7th that you were looking at, Laura?
Yes.
Yes, that's fine. We just want to make clear that that was part of your motion in the vote tonight. So apparently it is. Thank you.
It was. Yeah, I heard that very specifically as part of the motion.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was there.
Yep. Okay. So we are on our final item for this evening, and that is item 8E, which is to discuss the next steps in hiring an interim and/or permanent city manager due to the resignation of our former city manager. And so let me just suggest that we schedule this item for a process discussion on our next agenda next Tuesday, and that we also schedule a closed session to look at possible candidates if we have some, and to bring Pam Derby, our recruiter, back for both of those items. Because of the contract that we signed with our recruiter, we have a 1 year, basically a warranty, so that reimbursable expenses is all that we would have to pay to do whatever level of outreach we want to do, and talk with her about both interim and or permanent, and what process we want to do. Do we have some people we know of? Does she know of some specific ones that we could narrow it down to interview? Or do we want to do a full-blown recruitment? Those are things we need to discuss as a separate item in open session for process. And then if we want to talk about specific people or like that, then that would be done in a closed session. And do we want to do it before the meeting? It sounds like we've already got potentially planning commission interviews before the meeting.
You also have probably what will be a pretty heavy agenda with your various assessment districts. They're all going to be rolling up that meeting.
Okay, so then the other question is,
just the packet will be thick, but Scott's got a couple public hearing items.
Okay.
We can continue to work with the council on refining that time frame for your agenda with the city clerk.
Yeah, I'm just concerned I don't want this to carry on for too long before we get whatever process it is started.
Well, Scott, Scott, if you're still on here, if you can let me know what do you have for public hearings for the 16th?
I don't think we have any public hearing for the 16th. We have those in July. We just have introduction, so it literally is sent out calendar items.
Okay. All right.
I think we're fine. I think we're fine.
And that's good.
Okay, because we're talking about something potentially for the meeting of June 16th. So, and if we have to do planning commission interviews, unless somebody wants to push those off, I think we need to get that done. We do
push off the planning commission.
What's that?
You said push off the planning commission
Well,
interviews.
that's an option if we need to have a closed session or something ahead of the regular meeting, or we hold a closed session at the end.
You're right.
We could do the closed session at the end.
Yeah, but I would be. I guess I would be in favor of separating the two, and if you have to have them over two separate meetings, then I would be open to that.
What about doing the planning commission interviews before the meeting? They shouldn't take very long. Maybe start those at 6. And
Are you suggesting in person or Zoom?
Well, it'll have to be Zoom.
It does?
Yeah. Yeah, we can't do in-person interviews.
Yeah, or else we're all going to die.
The interviews are open to the public.
Yeah, the interviews are open to the public anyway. So, I mean, we can let them in. They can be as attendees or something. We can let them in when it's time for their interview, but.
And Laura, you're saying that the agenda for the 16th is going to be pretty thick?
Scott just confirmed with me that it is going to be a lot of consent calendar items, so I think we're okay as to how you want to do that.
Why don't we just do the closed session right after?
Yeah. So we'll do the interviews first, maybe at 6 for the planning commission.
We do have 4 candidates, right?
Right.
So can we finish that in 1 hour? Should we reserve a little bit more?
Well, 3 of them are incumbents and 1 we've interviewed before, so it's more of a refresher. So it seems to me if we give each of them, I don't know, we could give each of them 15 minutes and hope we get done in time, and then we'll figure it out when we're in the meeting who we're going to appoint. Something like that. And then have the regular meeting and then do a closed session at the end. That way the process issues can be an item on the regular agenda during the open session, and then we go to any specific
closed session candidate
related or something like that in the closed session.
I think we got to get started on that sooner than later.
Huh?
We need to get started on this more sooner than later.
We do. We do.
Okay.
And we have some, yes.
Add at the next regular city council meeting, I do know that we'll have a presentation from the Director of Public Works in Concord regarding the sewer decrease. And then the only other action item would be to select the 3 planning commissioners for the next term.
Okay. Well, that sounds fairly reasonable then. If most of the stuff is on the consent calendar, maybe it won't be even as long as tonight.
I blame Jim. I blame Jim.
Yeah, right. No, there's another guy that's another J that's in the group.
That's okay. That's okay. We've had a good meeting tonight. I appreciate everybody's feedback. We've had some
Janet.
things we can discuss. Yeah, I'm a J too. Sorry. So, is everybody okay with that as a process forward?
6 o'clock early meeting, then regular meeting, then closed session. All right, let's do it.
6 o'clock.
Okay. Start. Very good. So that brings us to item 9, which is council items limited to council requests and directives for future meetings. And I heard a couple of suggestions earlier. Do you want to remind us I think
I
Susan
would.
brought up one and Jeff did too.
Yeah, so I wanted to just have an agenda item for us to look at the policies regarding the use of police force, de-escalation efforts, sort of what best practices we currently use, could adopt, talk a little bit and comment on the 8 can't wait recommendations, and essentially looking for an expanded version of what Chief Warren put out in a message to the community today, but more so give us an opportunity to learn, to discuss, and also give members of the public an opportunity to public comment. So I'd like that to come us back as an agenda item.
Okay. Jeff, was that the same thing you were talking about? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah. Was that the same item?
I think.
No, it was
No,
me.
that was Tuesday's item. I think Jim had a comment as well.
Okay.
Jim, you see my hand
talk?
waving?
Yeah, I see it. Go ahead.
All right. I want to expand on that even further. I had, as I said, I had a couple of meetings and an in-person meeting with the chief of police, and this is her idea. What she would like to suggest is forming something called in her mind, a public safety committee, which would be a forum and not just a single meeting, but one that goes over a period of time that we could do and go through all of the things that have been raised during this past week and the week before, and how we can explain to people and open up and create a dialogue. And how to facilitate that is going to be a challenge. This is something that she suggested to me, and that's why I'm bringing it forward. But it's something like a public safety committee that would be made up of both members of the community, members of the police department, members of the city council, and then that would be a forum to discuss all of the things that that need to be discussed in the open.
And what I might suggest to help facilitate that with Tulia's item, talking about policies and next steps, I think when that meeting is set, the chief can, maybe articulate that vision and get direction
Right.
from the council to proceed, but we can fold that all under and make sure the chief's ready to,
Yeah, no,
present.
she's got some very good ideas, and I think they're really worth formulating into a regular forum.
Yeah, she discussed those with me today too, a little bit, and I think we need to discuss that as a council. I'm suspecting we don't want that on our next week's agenda.
Well, I'll work with staff to see what we have available in the council on coming up with a mutually agreed to date, because we do have the budget following next week's meeting and then the budget after that as well.
Yeah, I would like it to come back sooner rather than later, but just please do check with the chief, certainly, so that she's ready.
Yeah, because it looks like we actually have 3 meetings left this month, potentially, right?
Yes, but 2 of them will be the budget. We will not make the budget to bring back to you on the 16th.
We have 2 meetings.
Yeah.
We have a meeting on the 16th, we have a meeting on the 23rd, and we have a meeting potentially on the 30th, correct?
Yes.
Wait, when did we get a meeting on the 23rd?
Where did that come from?
If we need it for the budget.
You will need it for the budget, because Paul has will be out of the office for graduation for his family. So he will not have budget information for your meeting of the 16th. It will be the 23rd for introduction, adoption the following week.
Okay.
So the 23rd will be a special meeting as well then?
Right. Yeah, we're going to hit every week this month. You didn't have anything better.
Excellent. Excellent.
By saying
so I'm thinking about going on vacation.
Yes. But let me ask a question to clarify. You said a meeting every week this month. Does that include the 30th?
Yes, it does, because that'll be adoption of the budget.
So 23rd after the 16th and the 30th.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll introduce the budget on the 23rd and we'll adopt it on the 30th. Okay?
Fantastic.
And so somewhere in there we'll fit this meeting that we're talking about for the policies and potentially a public safety committee discussion and all of that. Okay. All right. Any other items for future agendas?
There was something that I think Laura and I had kind of talked about a little bit, but I wasn't quite, I don't know if we were connecting on what we want to do. And it had to do with the city's response to the folks that do business with the city, places like All Out Sports and the theater company that we talked about earlier. We had kind of talked about some actions that we could do to relieve some of the COVID-related impact to them. I would like to readdress how we're approaching that, because I think I don't know if you want to do that. So we don't have to do that in a council meeting if you want to just do it offhand, because you mentioned that you could do that administratively.
Yes.
But I would like to talk about it a little further.
I can send an email out to you all as to what's transpired and an update on that.
Okay.
We're all okay.
Yeah, because I do think a lot of companies are doing they're doing goodwill gestures, goodwill efforts towards their customers, and I think we have an opportunity to do the same. So
we have.
And then I think, I don't know, Jim, were you still interested in doing this outdoor dining thing as well, given that indoor dining is going to be available at the end of the month or the beginning of next month?
Well, yeah, we've had several suggestions, one from Cecilia Hartley, and then I saw an email from Rachel, no last name. But, yeah, and I know that they're doing them in, I think, Danville.
In Danville, yeah.
So, I mean, it's an option, but if you're right, if this county's going to bless us and have in dining again, then I don't know if we want to do it. But it was a way to, to accelerate that, if you would.
Well, the other thing is,
well, if the business themselves.
Yeah, I don't know. Most of our establishments have outdoor dining right now.
Yeah, I think I would want to do that if they wanted to initiate it. I wouldn't want to do it for them. Like if they all came and said, "Hey, we really want to do this really quick," then maybe we could talk about it. But I guess it is going to open up pretty soon. So
I've talked to the business owners, and not knowing, they kind of have looked at doing outdoor dining in their parking lots, things of that nature. They're looking into all the requirements they have to meet for the health department and ABC, and they're kind of thinking investing in all of that, maybe just wait. But we can work with them, and we have the authority at administrative level to work on administrative permits and waive the fees and grant them the outdoor usage of their private parking lot areas without any action by the council. Our codes are set up maybe differently than some of the other cities. We have that flexibility.
Well,
okay. Yeah, I mean, if they were interested, then I think that'd be cool. If not, then
yeah. And there was some sort of an expression of interest by at least one or two of them that I got, secondhand. And as you've already noticed, that they're already at the Mudville, they're already sitting out on the outdoor patio or the veranda out there. And I suspect that the rest of them will be following suit as best they can do.
Well, most of them have a good bit of space outdoors as well. And if you close off parking by closing a street, that makes it
that's a problem.
Customers.
So maybe if we want to agendize this for a future meeting or not worth
I asked for that at the last meeting.
Okay, it's administrative. I think we handled that. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So any other items for future agendas? All right. We have no closed sessions. Thank you all. We made it before 11. We are adjourned.
Bless you, my dear.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you.